My boyfriend of 10 years confessed to me that he has been cheating on me with his best friend who's also our roommate. And now after I found out the truth, my boyfriend's asking if he can stay with me as well as his best friend at the same time. And at this point, I'm honestly disgusted and I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, so my boyfriend, who we will call Nick, has been with me for about 10 years and we are high school sweethearts. And I truly believe that we were building a life together. 2 summers ago, we moved into a small 1-bedroom apartment and his best friend, who we will call Liam, basically became a permanent resident. He crashed on our couch nearly every night, left messes everywhere, and acted like he lived there. And honestly, I hated it. But Nick kept brushing off my concerns, saying Liam just needed a place to hang out. After a year of this, we decided to move into a slightly bigger place so that Liam could have his own room instead of hogging our living room space. I thought this would fix things, but as soon as we moved in, Nick started spending every night in Liam's room playing video games. At first, I thought it was just guys being guys. They had been close since they were little, and I was just happy that Nick was able to spend more time with his close friends. But then, entire nights would go by where I wouldn't even see my own boyfriend, and sometimes he wouldn't come to bed at all. Other times, he'd go straight from Liam's room to work the next day. I kept telling myself that I was overthinking things, that Nick and Liam had been best friends forever, and I was being irrational or something like that. But deep down, I knew something felt wrong. Then, after months of emotional distance and our relationship slowly crumbling, Nick finally came clean in a way that truly has shattered me beyond anything I could possibly describe. As he told me that he's been sleeping with Liam almost every single night. He said he was cheating on me with his childhood best friend for months. And here's the kicker. He claims he still loves me, but he also loves Liam, and he wants us to continue our relationship with Liam included. I feel betrayed, confused, and honestly disgusted. I can't even process what I'm supposed to do. I feel like this is unforgivable. He's acting like this is just something I should adjust to. Like I should be grateful he's even including me in his new relationship. I feel like a third wheel in my own home, but I also feel like if I walk away, I'm throwing away 10 years of my life, because at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Okay, this is crazy to me. Your boyfriend's cheating on you with his childhood best friend, while also saying like, oh, we can keep our relationship going while I sleep around with my best friend on the side. It's no big deal. Like this guy is out of his mind if he thinks this is okay. So yeah, I think the fact that you feel this is unforgivable and that you are disgusted and confused and feel completely betrayed is absolutely rational. Like you're the only rational person in this entire house. And I know for a fact if I was in your position, I would never take this sitting down. I would never be okay with my partner cheating on me with their best friend who's also a roommate. And it kind of makes me wonder how long this was going on. Like seriously, this doesn't just happen overnight. This is clearly something that's been boiling in the background for a while now. And I bet when Liam moved in, that's exactly the time they decided to be weirdos and be like, oh yeah, we could keep our relationship going, but also I'll keep my girlfriend around too. Like seriously, this is so messed up, it's not even funny. So no, you didn't do anything wrong, and yes, you absolutely have every right to be disgusted by this, because your boyfriend is cheating on you actively and currently with another guy in your own home, and that is not something that anybody should ever have to deal with. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for wearing my wrist brace at work while my coworker has a broken wrist as well? Because right now another coworker is really giving me problems about this, and at this point I don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, so this was a really weird situation. I'm a 24-year-old female and I work as a cashier at a sub place, and my coworker last week broke her wrist falling on the ice, so she now has a cast on. Now for reference, when I was 14 years old, I was diagnosed with tendinitis in both wrists, and for the most part, it doesn't flare up unless I'm doing a lot with my hands. Well, I've been doing a lot of embroidery recently, and as such, I've caused a flare up. It's been bothering me for about 2 weeks, and I wear my brace at home, and generally speaking, just kind of sucked up the pain while at work, because with my coworker wearing a cast, I felt weird about wearing my brace. Well, yesterday, it was bad enough that I had to wear it at work. As I'm putting my stuff down and getting ready to start my shift, another one of my coworkers, who we will call Lisa, started to glare at me. She then asked me in her usual snobby tone that she uses with me, "What is that for?" So I told her about my tendinitis and what it was, but then she started getting all huffy as if I was making it up. Mind you, the coworker who has the broken wrist didn't care. She didn't say anything, but for the rest of my shift, Lisa kept giving me dirty looks, which is not out of the norm. I mean, she just doesn't like me. Close to the end of the shift, I had to use the bathroom, and being as it's hard to do so with a wrist brace, I took it off. After coming out and washing my hands, I was putting the brace back on when Lisa made another offhanded comment about how I I was so lucky that I could take mine off. Now, I didn't do this to spite anyone. My wrist just hurts, but now I'm getting ready for another shift, and I'm trying to decide if I should just suck it up and go without my brace at work. So seriously, would I be the jerk to wear one? Because honestly, I don't know what to do. First off, no, you are definitely not the jerk. Lisa is a busybody with nothing better to do with her life. Like seriously, that's all this comes down to. She is just some loser who's clearly obsessed with hating you. And she's trying to make this into something that it absolutely is not. Because here's a fun fact. Everybody in the office could walk in with a wrist brace and it would still not be any kind of shot at the coworker who broke their arm. Like there really is no equivalency here. The fact that she has a problem with this says more about her than it does about you. And the fact that the coworker who did break her wrist is like, look, it's fine, I have no problem with it. Like in my opinion, if I was in your shoes, I would be like, fine, they're cool with it, then I'm gonna be cool with it. Because Lisa does not have your best interests in mind, and I guarantee you she's trying to mess with you simply because she doesn't like you. Am I the jerk for how I reacted to my husband's ex-wife's girlfriend buzzing my stepson's hair? Because right now, this entire situation feels incredibly overblown, and at this point, I don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, to explain the relationships here, I married my husband, who we will call Alex, about a year ago, and we've been together for 4 years. He was previously married, and after they had agreed to divorce, she told him that she was pregnant. And for the sake of the story, we'll call this ex-wife Kate. Kate had been cheating on Alex with someone we will call Jessica, who's a 32-year-old female, for about a year. I had known Alex for years through mutual friends, and I met his son when he was about 6 months old. So now, back to the present day. Kate and Jessica are together still, but very hot and cold. I went to pick up my stepson from school. Jessica had dropped him off, and he seemed really quiet and sad. I asked him what was wrong, and he said he was sad because he had no hair. For reference, he has beautiful curly hair, and he told us that he wanted to grow it out into a mullet. At that time, my husband cleared it with his mom that they were both okay with that, and she agreed to have me trim it as needed, like around his ears. Well, he took off his hat and it was buzzed down to his scalp. I was shocked, but I also just said, well, I think you look very handsome, but I thought you wanted to grow it out. Why did you cut it? Well, apparently Jessica was going to trim it and forgot to put the guard on. And when she realized that, it was too late, and she had to buzz it. When we got home, I called Kate. She didn't know how bad the haircut was and was tied up at a work event. She suggested I make sure I get the whole story on what happened. So with her permission, I went right to Jessica after I called my husband, who was driving home from a couple of hours away, and explained what was going on. So I called Jessica, asked to verify what he had said, and tell her how upset he was. She said that is exactly what happened, but didn't see why it was such a big deal. She kept saying that I'm overreacting and that it's just hair. So I tried to explain that as a kid, there is so much that he just doesn't get a say in. So it was a big deal to him. I then told her that she should never go near his head with clippers ever again. Well, she came back with, well, you're not his mom. And when I reminded her that she wasn't either, she said to me, well, I'm a lot closer than you are. I've been there since day one. To which I said, yeah, because you were an affair partner. Don't cut his hair ever again. And then I hung up the phone. I then called my husband back to explain everything, and I calmed down. And he had been on the phone with Kate discussing things as well. I also texted Kate to give an overview and say I was sorry if I overreacted. It's now the next day, and Jessica is trying to tell Kate that I shouldn't be allowed to cut his hair if she can't, and that I need to get my parenting privileges taken away. And I honestly just think that's crazy. And just to clarify my role as a step-parent, Kate and my husband meet twice a year alone to discuss parenting things. And at the last one, Kate said she is comfortable with seeing me as a parent and is ready to include me in the meetings going forward. So am I the jerk for getting upset with Jessica for not only buzzing his hair, but for how she reacted trying to minimize it? Because right now, I don't know what to do. Okay, honestly, in my opinion, I don't think you're the jerk at all. I think you tried to have a rational conversation, but then Jessica was the one who decided to try and insult you, and that, in my opinion, is not okay. Because in my opinion, at that point, the gloves are off. You want to start going there, then let's go there. Because this could have been a mature conversation. This could have been worked out really easily, everybody could have walked away happy, but instead, Jessica decided to get toxic and then tries to be like, oh, you need to take away her parenting rights. And it's like, oh, okay, you're that pissed off that she got one over on you. So no, you didn't do anything wrong, but this really is a messy situation. And hopefully this all works out for the stepson, because this entire argument, in my opinion, is incredibly silly. Am I the jerk for taking my dad home after missing a train instead of waiting for the next one to go on a family outing? Because right now I'm incredibly frustrated and I don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, so my dad, my sister, and I were supposed to take a train downtown for a car show. I was the one who arranged and paid for everything, since I thought it would be good family time. I told him to be ready by 12:15 p.m. so that we would have enough time to drive to the station and park before the train arrives at about 1 o'clock p.m. The drive is about 25 minutes, so my thinking was that I would have about 49 29 minutes to drive to the station and figure out parking and get to our terminal. I had also never been to this station, so I just wanted to have extra time in case things go wrong. He said that he would come out to the car at 12:15 p.m. So my sister and I got to his house at 12:10 and we just waited. He then didn't come out of his house until 12:31 p.m. I told him that we would be late, but he said that we were fine since it was only a 25-minute drive. We arrived at the station at 12:55 p.m. and here's where the first problem came up. We could only find reserved parking spots. So we had to park in a reserved spot so that I could get out of the car and go find somebody to ask where the regular lot was. Well, it turns out nobody is in the customer support area as it is a holiday, and at this point it's 1 o'clock. Then my dad saw a security officer in the lot and told me to go ask him where the regular lot was, to which he told me that it was at the other side of the road. So I park up in the regular lot and run back to the boarding area where my dad and sister were waiting, but the doors of the train literally closed as it was about 20 meters from the train. Well, my dad and sister didn't board as they saw that I couldn't make it. I was upset but willing to let it go as there was another train coming in an hour, and then everything got heated. My dad got mad at me for missing the train because I should have known where to park instead of wasting time in the reserve lot looking for the regular lot. And at this point, I was super mad. I told him that the reason I wanted to come early was because I didn't know the station and where everything was. And since he was late, we didn't have enough time. He said I should have researched the parking lot before coming, and we then got into an argument which eventually got very bad. At this point, I didn't even want to go to the car show as I was so pissed at him for blaming me. I told him that I would wait in the car and that he and my sister could go to the show and that I'll pick them up when they come back. He then called me selfish as he and my sister got ready for this family outing just for me and that he wanted me to come on the next train as we already made the drive over to the station. I told him no because I was in tears from the argument and I wasn't in the mood to spend an entire day with him after he said terrible things to me for something that he did. Eventually, he got in the truck and we headed home. He told me to never speak to him again as I was selfish and I wasted his time, and he will hold the grudge for at least a month. So seriously, am I the jerk for taking him home instead of going on the next train after he was late and tried to blame it on me? Because seriously, at this point, I don't know what to do. No, you're definitely not the jerk because this really would have pissed me off. Maybe I'm alone on this one, but I do not like being blamed for something that is not my fault. That seriously sets my hair on fire and I really don't like it, especially when it's coming from the person who actually is the problem. If your dad had simply come outside when he said he was going to, you guys would have had just enough time to make it on the train. You would have had time to park, get to the station, and be ready to go. So for him to be like, oh wow, this is your fault for not researching it better. It's like, no dude, this is your fault for not being outside on time. So no, you are definitely not the jerk, and the fact that he's trying to pin this on you, in my opinion, is unacceptable. I'm currently seriously considering ending my engagement and my relationship with my fiancé after he yelled at me in a way that I've not seen since my last awful relationship, because right now I feel very scared and I don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, so I went out with my fiancé on Valentine's Day, and my gift was going to this thing called Martini Wars, and I think this was something on Eventbrite that he found last minute. It was a battle between bartenders and, as you can imagine, a lot of drinking. Well, things were going fine until the ride home. In the Uber, his tongue was hanging out of his mouth, his eyes were rolled back, his head bobbing back and forth, and I was afraid he was going to vomit in the car. So I kept the windows down and I tried to comfort him. We made it home fine, but then he became very obstinate. He refused to listen, he was still borderline sick, so I kept telling him to move to the toilet. Well, he wouldn't budge from the spot in the bathroom he was sitting at, and he vomited all over the floor. I then became upset at how unnecessarily defiant he was being. But then, at some point, he became angry and showed me a side that I've never seen from him in the 5 years I've known him. He began screaming at me and didn't back down. For reference, I was in an awful relationship beforehand, and it triggered the worst memory of that relationship. I begged and pleaded with him to stop yelling, but he just wouldn't do it. At some point, he left the room, and I took the opportunity to get a hotel that night. Well, fast forward, and I woke up in the hotel to a text message of his saying that he didn't remember anything, but he was very sorry. But I stayed away from him all this weekend. But since he's returned home, he's done nothing to make amends for his transgressions. I then told him the engagement was off, and he accepted it. He avoids me around the house, and he doesn't try to connect with me at all. I guess the worst part about this is that Wednesday nights are supposed to be date nights. Yesterday, he told me he was going out with his boy and asked if I wanted to go, and I feel like he doesn't even care how much he hurt me, and he doesn't even want to fight for the relationship. I know I'm coming to this one-sided, but I'm wondering if there's any salvaging of this relationship. If you were in his shoes, what steps would you take to show that you were serious about the fact that you hurt your fiancé? Because right now, I really don't know what to do. Oh man, this really really is sketchy because I don't blame you for not wanting to be around your fiance. And I think it's so ironic that he's like, oh, I don't remember anything, but I'm really sorry as well. But it's like, wait a second, you clearly remember something if you're apologizing. Like, what's going on right now? Just own up to it and try to make amends. Saying you're sorry in some kind of loose apology is not gonna cut it. So truly, I'm so sorry that this happened to you because you do not deserve this. Your fiance is completely out of line for treating you this way, and I think you have every right to be reconsidering this relationship as a whole. Am I the jerk for not refunding the bachelorette party group after $3 per person came back from a massage that got canceled? Because right now my friends are being super weird and I don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, so I took on the daunting task of organizing a bachelorette party for my best friend. Knowing she preferred a classy celebration over the typical bar scene, I meticulously planned a sophisticated yacht dinner cruise. I made sure to invite everyone the bride had asked for. I coordinated the yacht director to arrange meals, a private suite, drinks, a message for the bride, and hotel accommodations. I shared all the details and costs with the group, and everyone agreed and promptly sent me their portions. However, just a week later, a friend of the bride whom I had never met before messaged me. She couldn't attend because she got a new puppy and wanted a refund. And it's like, seriously, a new puppy? I couldn't think of a crappier reason not to show up for one of your closest friends. By that time, all payments were finalized, and refunding her would either mean covering her share myself or asking the group to contribute more money. After explaining that to her, she shot back sarcastically, suggesting, well, how about you just keep the money and make sure the bride has a good time? We eventually agreed to use her meal credit towards an extra bottle of alcohol for the group. As the event approached, I added personal touches like disposable cameras and decorations, and effectively spending additional money from my own pocket without asking the group for additional payments. The bride invited a few of us to stay with her in the hotel room we had collectively paid for. Initially, 4 of us planned to stay, but 2 friends backed out last minute to sleep at home with their boyfriends instead, leaving just the bride and me. Some group members later insinuated that they had paid for a hotel room for just the bride and me, which wasn't the original plan. On the day of the event, we enjoyed the yacht cruise and it was nice. The following morning, we had a massage scheduled, but the bride was incredibly sick and really just wanted to sleep. I canceled with the therapist who kindly waived the cancellation fee, and as a courtesy, I sent her a portion of the cost of the service. The remaining amount from the massage offset the extra expenses that I had previously covered out of my own pocket. I broke almost exactly even, with maybe a $3 refund for each after doing the math. But I didn't even bother with it, as I figured $3 was nothing. Well, about a week later, another one of the bride's friends questioned me why she hadn't received a refund for the canceled massage. I explained the situation, detailing the cancellation fee and the additional costs that I had personally covered, which all balanced out. She then accused me of using group funds for my own benefit and questioned the overall expenses, despite having previously agreed to them. I then clarified that the hotel room was intended for multiple people, but others had chosen not to stay. I then sarcastically offered to refund her $3 from the extra that I had acquired, but she refused. Planning group events is already frustrating enough without having to defend myself over every single dollar. I never asked anyone for extra money, and every detail of the original cost was spelled out for everyone. I broke almost exactly even after the massage was canceled, considering the extra out-of-pocket expenses I paid for. So am I the jerk for not providing full $3 refunds and using the remaining funds to cover my expenses? Because right now, I'm honestly not sure what to do. No, you're not the jerk at all. These people suck. Seriously, it seems like they're trying to nickel and dime you, while also finding every opportunity to show how ungrateful they are about this entire situation. Like seriously, this would be so frustrating if I was in your shoes. Here you are going out of your way to schedule all this crap for these people, and they're literally being so unappreciative of all the things you've done for them. So no, you are definitely not the jerk. Your friends are being weird, and I don't blame you for being frustrated with their actions. Am I the jerk for telling my friend to go to a food bank, as she's going through one of the hardest times financially she's ever gone through in her life? Because right now she's very pissed off at me for suggesting that, and I honestly don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, so I have a friend who we will call Sally for the sake of the story, who has been going through some tough times. Sally split from her boyfriend last year when she caught him cheating. They had been together for over 2 decades, and he was very wealthy. Sally was a homemaker while they were together, and when they split, she was left with literally nothing. Ever since the split, she has been relying on the kindness of friends to get by. She has mostly been staying with one friend in particular, but lots of friends have been pitching in to help her meet her needs. Currently, she is attempting to support herself by trying to find work as a freelance artist, which she refers to as hustling, but most of the money that she makes immediately goes back into art supplies. I live in a different state from her currently, and I'm barely scraping by myself with a child to care for, so I have not been able to help her financially. Instead, I just try to be a sympathetic ear for her her to vent to, and I've let her know that I don't mind her venting to me. It is also important to know that when she was with her ex, they would often help their friends make ends meet financially, and she has helped me and my family more than once. Yesterday, we were talking on the phone, and she mentioned that she couldn't afford any food. She said that for the past few days, she's been barely eating anything, and she doesn't want to ask the friend she is staying with for food because she feels that friend is already doing too much. I then mentioned that she should try looking into some kind of local food banks in her area, and she became extremely offended. She said to me, "You know, you would think with all the people I've helped over the years that I wouldn't have to turn to that. It is embarrassing." I then told her that I wish I could help her myself, but I've only got $100 until the next payday, and I have to put my child first. I offered to help her by doing some Googling for her just for her options, but she insisted that taking food from a charity was embarrassing and unacceptable. But I reminded her that everyone goes through difficult times, and it's not embarrassing to ask for help. I then asked her if she had looked down on her friends who had needed help over the years, and she said that she didn't, but that she just wasn't used to being the person in need. She then ended the call saying she needed to get back to work, and I really got the feeling that I offended her. So seriously, am I the jerk? Because right now I'm not sure what to do. Okay, honestly, I don't think you're the jerk at all. If Sally really is having a hard time and things are not working out for her, then going to a food bank is absolutely okay. It's the people that go there knowing that they don't need help, but take food anyways that truly are the problem. And we've covered a few people who do that, and those people are the scum of the earth. But Sally in this story doesn't sound like that kind of person. She seems like someone who's clearly just having a rough time and she could use the help. So no, you're not the jerk for suggesting that, because that is a legitimate way for her to get help. And if she really is offended by that, then that is something that she is gonna have to figure out. My entitled parents tried to force me to give up my inheritance just so they could have the money to take care of a child they clearly could not afford. And I honestly could not be more upset. Here's what happened. I am a 19-year-old female, and I'm my parents' second child. I have 3 brothers and 1 other sister. We grew up very poor, and our parents were often dependent on financial help from relatives and friends just so they could raise us. This is because even though my dad has a mediocre job and my mom doesn't work, they just kept on popping out one kid after another. My parents are very religious and believe that children are a gift from God. I think personally that's just a bunch of BS. My parents' choices to have more kids wouldn't bother me if it hadn't actively caused mine as well as my siblings' lives to turn to absolute garbage. While growing up, we never had new clothes or toys. We had to accept handouts from family members who were much better off than we were. We never went out or did anything fun. And to top it all off, we were well aware that the rest of the family looked down on us for constantly asking for handouts. Now, my older brother and I have managed to get into good colleges and are looking forward to a future that would be better than our parents' lives. He and I were staying at our parents' place for a while due to the COVID-19 lockdown. One morning, my parents called all 5 of us into the living room, and that's when my mom announces that she has great news. The smile that was forming on my face died pretty quickly when she said, "We're pregnant again." At this point, I lost my temper. I asked them how they could be so stupid and irresponsible. Do they not have enough financial troubles already that they need to bring in another mouth to feed? My older brother tried to calm me down, but I was livid. After a lifetime of scarcity because of my parents' stupidity, they still had not learned their lesson. I asked them how they planned to provide for this kid, and what my dad said next totally blew my mind. My dad told me that I would have to give up the money that our great uncle had left me. For the record, my uncle had left all 5 of us some money, which we only had access to when we turned 18. When he said that, I said, "No, absolutely not. That money's gonna help me pay for my college expenses." And when I told him that I would not do that, he called me selfish for not being there for the family. I then told them straight up that if they couldn't provide for that kid, then they should not have tried to have one in the first place. My mom then started crying and called me a heartless monster. My dad told me he was disgusted with me, but I told them there was no way I was going to pay for their stupidity and that I would only be using this money for my college education. But to be honest, I was really worried about my siblings' lives getting even worse. While my older brother and I have finally escaped our parents' clutches, the others, especially my younger sister, will be expected to help take care of this baby. No teenager deserves to have their adolescence ruined by dealing with diapers and having to take care of a screaming baby. I know what that's like because I had to go through that as well. It was expected of me to be an unpaid nanny to my younger brothers and sisters. My older brother could go out with his friends and have fun, but I had to stay home and help give baths and feed the toddlers. At this point, I got other family members involved to try and understand where I'm coming from. So I decided to call my mom's maternal cousin. She's one of my favorite people in the world, and when I told her that my mom and dad were expecting another kid, she could not believe what she was hearing. I told her everything and explained how they expected me to hand over my inheritance, and she was absolutely appalled. She said she was going to speak to my parents and told me not to sign over anything. I promised her I wouldn't, and of course I wasn't going to. Things escalated from there, but to be honest, I've now decided to cut contact with my parents. I just can't watch my family slide further and further into this garbage pit. I'll be maintaining contact with my sister just to make sure my parents can't brainwash her. My older brother is going to stay in touch with all of them, which is a good thing as he can act as a link between me and the other siblings if my parents ever forbid them from talking to me. Otherwise, I'm completely done with these people. Good for this original poster for standing up for themselves. It's terrible that he has parents who are super irresponsible and bringing children into this world that they cannot take care of. And worst of all, they wanted the original poster to give over the money they were going to use for college, which is truly just so disgusting and toxic. This original poster literally has a way out of their situation, and these parents want to try and take that away and perpetuate this weird environment of everyone staying poor. So good for this original poster for standing up for themselves and getting away from this, because they can do a lot better than this and they're going to be so much happier away from their weird entitled parents. My ex is still trying to talk to me, even though we've been broken up for over 4 years, and I honestly don't know what to do. So I genuinely want to understand what is going on right now, because the relationship I had with my ex wasn't that serious, and it was only like that because he didn't want it to be serious. So first, a little bit of backstory. We met 4 years ago and dated off and on for a few months. I met him through my roommates and was very hesitant to get involved with him at first. He came off too strong and didn't seem like a stable or healthy person to date. On the 4th day of knowing him, he got us into a car accident because he decided to race his friend. Thankfully, none of us were hurt, but it showed me how immature and impulsive he really was. He apologized profusely and I let it go, but his father kicked him out of the house because it was his car in the first place that he wrecked. So he moved in with me as well as my roommates. This was all temporary, which I was really uncomfortable with, but couldn't really say anything otherwise. Another red flag was when he opened up to me about his ex-girlfriend. She apparently cheated on him. He was crying about it and seemed pretty angry. I could obviously tell that he was not over her yet, and told him the hard truth that I did not think he was ready to still be dating. He was stubborn and kept trying to charm me. It worked, and soon I started to catch feelings for him, and that's when he started ghosting me. Not much to be said there, he just stopped reaching out, and when I would ask him if he's lost interest, he would tell me no, and that he was just going through stuff. He would only show up once in a while to spend some quality time together and then disappear. I soon caught on and stopped trying, but it was really heartbreaking overall. I saw him one time about a month later, and he didn't even say hi. Then another month passes by and he only shows up at my house and starts flirting and getting touchy as if nothing had happened. He didn't give me an explanation and showed zero remorse, but I was still not over him and wanted closure badly, so I still let him in. He didn't put any effort in, we didn't go on dates, and our conversations were incredibly dull. He wasn't interested in getting to know me, and he was very vengeful and told me that he wanted to work hard and become rich. Also, his ex can regret cheating on him. That was literally his main goal in life. He showed up at my house once or twice a week. He would bring drinks and then he would get wasted. We would spend more quality time together, if you know what I mean, and then he would spend the night and leave early in the morning. At that point, I started to lose interest pretty quickly. I wanted to have a conversation and end things properly, but he said something along the lines of, not this again. I'm not going to change. This is all I can offer. I told him to do what he wants to do and that I was going to do the same. I can happily say that I have not seen him since. I basically ghosted him and I had zero regrets because he did it first. He treated me like garbage and wouldn't even give me a chance to talk things out. He kept messaging me for months on end, but I ignored him. Eventually, I started to feel bad, especially after he blew up on one of my roommates about how they avoid me and how I'm doing the same. For the record, their decision to cut ties with him has nothing to do with me, but for old time's sake, I reached out and we had a talk and I explained everything to him. I thought that I would at least give give him closure, even if he denied me that the first time, and I made it clear I was not interested in rekindling things, and he said he respected that. At least that's what he said, because over the years, he kept trying to talk to me. Yesterday, for example, he texted me saying he misses me and asked if we could talk from time to time. Honestly, I have no hard feelings, but I don't really want to be friends with this guy. We were never friends and we're just different people, so I don't understand why he still tries to talk to me. I'm not saying any of this to be bitter, I'm just really confused and I just don't get it. Has anyone ever gone through something similar? I'm really curious to hear other people's input because this whole thing is really confusing. What should I do? This guy sounds really clingy. It seems like what he had going on with you was this like on and off relationship where he could basically do whatever he wants. He could disappear for months on end, then come back and spend quality time with you. And from the looks of it, no other woman wants anything to do with him. And he's being kicked to the curb and he has literally nobody. So he's going back to the one person who gave him the time of day. And I'm honestly surprised after everything you described that you even went back to him just to give him closure. I don't think he deserves it because I think he was a terrible boyfriend, if you even want to call him that. If anything, he's just incredibly desperate and very possessive. And I think it's time to cut ties with him completely. This is not a healthy thing for you or any kind of future relationship, and it's not something you want to entertain because his actions truly have consequences. And one of those consequences, in my opinion, is getting cut off by someone he mistreated. An entitled Karen tries to disrupt service by turning off our Uber application at the restaurant I'm working at. So I get this table and immediately I knew I would not like them. They appear to be in their mid-20s and both just seemed extremely snobbish. The girl doesn't take off her sunglasses at all. They seat themselves without speaking to me first, and she tries to put her purse on another table next to them. They park their extremely expensive chrome car directly in front of the restaurant on the street, and after being told that they can't park there, they just said, "It's fine." I didn't care if their car got towed, so I just dropped the conversation. I begin to ask them if they would like to start off with sparkling water or tap water, and this entitled Karen just cuts me off and immediately says in an irritated tone, "Bottled flat water." I start them off with that, and maybe 5 minutes later, they are ready to order. I ask her what she would like, and she just responds the whole time like she's repeating herself for the 10th time, even though I only had her give me her order once. I step into the bathroom for maybe half a minute because, you know, I needed to, and I hear the Uber tablet going off with a new order. I wash my hands and step out to see this entitled Karen standing in front of the tablet, obviously trying to do something on it. I should also mention I was the only one on the floor. It was a morning shift, so obviously it was a nightmare. I go over to her and ask what she's doing. She immediately says, "Can you turn off your Uber? It's making a noise, and I don't like it." I immediately respond with, "Ma'am, please do not touch our equipment. I can turn the volume on the ringer down, but I cannot turn off Uber." She then looks at me like I just threw snot at her. "It's making an annoying noise." I was really tempted to say, "So are you, but you don't see me complaining." But instead, I just said, "I understand, but this is a part of our business. As I just mentioned, I can turn the volume down if you find it so disruptive." She gives a long, drawn-out sigh and just says, "Whatever," then just walks back to her table. She continued to be an entitled Karen her entire meal, and then thankfully left. The only silver lining here is the fact that her boyfriend even tipped us at all, because honestly, I wasn't expecting much. I gotta be honest, I was really hoping her car would get towed, because if someone acts that entitled, sometimes karma just needs to come back and teach them a lesson. But I have to say it, this entitled Karen was very brave. To go up to somebody else's equipment, let alone at a place of business, and to start fiddling with it, all because you don't like the noises coming out of it, is very brave. She could have absolutely deleted something, she could have damaged the equipment somehow, but best of all, she could have been kicked out permanently for destroying company property, which honestly I kinda wish would happen. I can't stand it when people act like this, where they think they're so entitled to just about everything around them, especially since this lady sounds like she's one of those people that no matter what you do or how hard you try to please them, they are always going to be offended over something. My girlfriend concealed the identity of someone she had spent some quality time with and saw them regularly while we were on vacation. I've been dating my girlfriend for a little over a year. For me, I'm in my early 30s and my girlfriend's in her upper 20s. This past winter, we went on a long road trip around the US, with our longest stay being 2 months in one location. We both are very into outdoor recreation, and that's why we stayed at this destination for so long. We both have several friends who live in the area and saw them throughout the stay, sometimes together and sometimes separate. It's worth mentioning that we have an extremely trustworthy relationship, very little feelings of jealousy, and absolutely no attempting to control who the other person chooses to spend spend time with. We both have male and female friends, and that's never been an issue. We have also had multiple partners in the past, well before meeting each other, and have talked on several occasions about past partners and hookups. This has never been a point of conflict. While we were on this trip, she spent a lot of time with one particular friend. They saw each other often and met up to hang out outdoors, which is very normal for us. I met him once or twice for a few minutes as we ran into each other outdoors, which again is very normal. She went to his house once. I was invited, but I ended up declining as I wasn't really feeling it that day. They seemed to text each other often, and I never thought anything of it. I remember seeing his name pop up on her phone frequently while we were around the house. 2 months passed and we moved into our permanent residence together. It's about 7 hours away from where we spent that 2-month trip. She had some close friends that were going to be in the area that we had just left and was sad about missing them. So she decided to go back for a week even though we had just spent 2 months there. I was invited again, but I declined as I was excited to get settled in our new home together. Several months passed and somehow the topic of conversation ended up on past intimate partners, if you know what I mean. She had shared with me before that there was a much older man, probably double her age, that she had spent some time with many years before we met. She always explained it to me as being fun but somewhat an awkward experience. I asked her if she had seen him since, and she stated that she had seen him a few times since then. I was curious and asked where she would run into him because she had said that he lived in an area that she had not been back to since she spent some time with him. But after I asked this question, she changed the subject and tried to avoid the question. And I don't think I can truly express how extremely out of character this was for her. I asked her again, and she said that she had seen him in passing at the place where we spent 2 months. I asked who it was and if I had met him. She said that we ran into him once in a parking lot on a trailhead. I was then racking my brain, trying to remember meeting an older gentleman that I just couldn't remember. She attempted to move the conversation in another direction, but the only older guy I could remember meeting was the friend she had spent a lot of time with, but I did not meet him in this parking lot, and I also met him more than once. I said something along the lines of, I remember meeting such and such, but that's not him, after calling him by name. But then she said, no, you're wrong, that was him. I immediately felt deceived and hurt. We really are not the jealous type, but it was obvious that she had hid this from me on purpose, that this is someone that she had spent some quality time with, and for whatever reason didn't want me to know about it. She had attempted to make me think it was someone else than her friend, who she was certain I knew. If I had not named this person, I truly don't believe she would have revealed their identity. She had always named other previous partners, and I was aware of who they were, but this person was kept a secret. My gears began turning, and I then get really curious if she had kept me in the dark because she had other motives like trying to cheat on me. Because of this, we had several long conversations over the next couple of days. Some trust was broken, and I was having a hard time believing she was telling me the whole truth. I mentioned how she had talked to him nonstop our entire trip, to which she replied that they barely talked and that it was mostly about outdoor recreation and plans around that. She continues to tell me she has nothing to hide and offers me to read through her text messages, which is something we have never done before. After scrolling through her messages, it turns out that they were texting pretty much every single day of our 2-month trip. The messages are mostly surface level, and there is no hint of anything deeper going on. But as I scroll towards the end of the 2-month timeline, she hints at the interaction being nothing and asks if we can be done with me looking through her phone. I said I would like to keep reading, to which she allowed me to do, thankfully. I then see that while she had been gone for that week without me to visit a close friend, they had met up, and she went to his house. I read her saying that she could stop by a little bit later in the day and try and meet up. When I asked her about this, she replied, questioning if she really did go to his house, almost as if she doesn't remember. I'm certain that she never told me about going over there, so I asked several times, and she continues to state that she doesn't remember going to his house during that week, but she implies that she must have gone there at some point. I asked what they did while she was there, and she states she doesn't remember. She swears to me that while she doesn't remember exact details, she is certain that nothing happened and she didn't do anything inappropriate. Everything I know about her says that she would never cheat or lie or do anything like this. She's generally pretty easy to read, and she wears her heart on her sleeve. But I feel so distraught about this situation because I want to believe her, and part of me does believe her, but it seems like a big red flag that she concealed his identity and continues to try and hide pieces of the story from me. It feels extremely shady shady the way I was kept in the dark. Perhaps nothing happened, but I am sure that I will never be able to truly know for certain. My only real choices are to believe her and move on, or choose to end the relationship. I love this girl with all of my heart, and prior to this, I was so certain that this would be the person that I would be spending the rest of my life with. I don't want to end the relationship, but I am having a really hard time accepting this reality. It makes my mind wander to what other things have been concealed from me, as well as if she is even a trustworthy person as I once thought. How can we move forward from this and still have a healthy, trusting relationship? Am I overanalyzing the situation? Are these red flags as intense as I think they are? She is very willing to do anything to make me feel safe, loved, and comfortable moving forward. What should I do? I gotta be honest, her behavior is super suspicious. She intentionally hid from you that she was meeting up with someone that she had spent some intimate time together, if you know what I mean. And I just don't think that's a good look. And it also is not a good look that her only defense to that was saying, oh, I just don't remember what happened. That's a pretty convenient amount of amnesia that just kind of happened out of nowhere. It just doesn't feel right to me. I think if anything, if you do decide to stick in this relationship, it's time to set some serious boundaries. Obviously, up until this point, you thought you could trust her and you feel like, hey, nothing could go wrong with our relationship. But from the sounds of it, this situation really does seem like it's thrown you for a loop. So I think some healthy communication and talking to each other, as well as being more transparent, could probably absolve you of all your fears. Another option to consider is possibly even talking to that former friend of hers, who she visited over and over again for like a week. You could try opening up that can of worms, but I don't know how your girlfriend would react, and I'm not sure if that would cause some problems. But either way, the way she acted is completely inappropriate, and I don't blame you for being upset, because this is sketchy behavior, and you deserve a lot better from your significant other. My entitled mother threatens to make me homeless if I didn't date the girl that she was planning to force me to marry, and I could not be more shocked and appalled at what goes down. Here's what happened. When I was 16 years old, my mother kicked me out of the house. I never really went into detail as to why I was kicked out though, but that changes today. First, a little bit of backstory. My mom, as most people in my life would know, is a religious fanatic. However, I am not. Do you see the problem here? My mother hates the fact that I refuse to let religion into my heart. I'm sorry, but it's just not my thing. I respect people who wish to practice religion, but for me, it's not something I want to do. Before my dad died, my mother was unable to force me into religion because my father is a big believer that people are entitled to their own belief. And when my father passed away, it made my life a living nightmare having to deal with my mother. I'll spare you the details on most things, but every time I complained, she would pull the exact same line each time. She would say, I am your mother, and I am the reason that you're alive. You must honor thy mother and thy father. So if you don't do that, you have no business living in my house. And I wasn't really looking to get kicked out, so I had no choice but to comply with her wishes. I had my older sister to vent to on the phone, but she lived far away because she and my brother-in-law were looking after her sick mother-in-law, so there wasn't much she could do to try and help the situation. I never told my friends, or anyone for that matter, what my mom was doing because I was so scared I would get kicked out. What brought things to head is when I came back from school one time and saw some random girl I've never met before sitting on the couch in the house. My mom introduced me to this girl and told me that this is the daughter of a woman she recently made friends with. She then told me that I was going to take her out to go see a movie that was showing that night. And at this point, I was kind of in a state of shock because this was completely out of the blue. To counter this unwanted date, I told my mom that I was planning on going over to my best friend's house to study, but my mother demanded that I was going to take her out and that this was going to be good for me. And weirdly enough, the girl was just smiling throughout the entire interaction, and I honestly felt so bad that I called up my friend and told him that I wasn't going to be able to study with him and that we have to do it another time. And while he did seem a little upset over that, overall he completely understood where I was coming from. The date itself wasn't horrible per se, but the girl was awfully clingy to me the entire time and called me these weird nicknames. And she got upset when I corrected people who assumed she was my girlfriend. When I got back, I decided that this wasn't something I was ever going to deal with ever again. My mom asked me how it went, and I told her I don't plan on doing that again. She then asked me why, and so I told her that I just don't want to. This girl isn't someone that I'm interested in. My mom told me that I was being ridiculous and that I'll get used to it and that I need to show more respect to my future partner. And at this point, I was really confused. I asked my mom what on earth she was talking about, and she told me that she and her mom agreed that we would be perfect for each other and that we would be the perfect married couple. couple together. And if I was shocked by the prearranged date, the fact that I had some kind of prearranged marriage absolutely blew my mind. I told her that that is absolutely not happening. I said, I am only 16 years old, and this is way too early for me to be thinking about marriage. She told me that as my mother, she knows best, and that she's apparently picked the perfect partner for me. But I refused. I said, I am not dating that girl. My mom pulled her usual line of needing to honor thy mother and thy father, and that she'll kick me out if I don't comply. I told her that she can't force me to do this, but she told me that she knows what's best, and if I don't like it, then I have to make a decision regarding my future in this household. I then went to my room to think about what on earth just happened. I called my sister and told her what was going on, and my sister knows that I don't want to get kicked out because I was scared of what would happen, but she knocked some sense into me and told me that I have to stand up to my mom, and that if my mom does kick me out, I still have a strong support system in my father's side of the family. And to be honest, it is true. The reason I never stood up to my mom till now was because I was afraid of getting kicked out. Because of that, I never realized how strong the support of my family truly is. I love my father's family so much, and most of my maternal family had my back as well. Even my best friend told me that it's time to stop pandering to my mom's dictatorship, and so I did. The next morning, my mom asked me if I've come to my senses, and I told her no, I'm not dating that girl. My mom then went off. She screamed and said that she got that girl for me and that I'm an ungrateful brat, and that if I just accept religion, I won't be corrupted anymore. I then shouted back saying, listen, I am done with your religion. Ever since dad passed away, you've done nothing but impose it on me and threaten me with homelessness each time I have a problem with it. I've put up with it till now, but I've had enough of subjecting myself to this garbage, even though I hate it. I am completely done with this. I want nothing to do with it anymore. And when I said that, my mom was completely shocked, and she had this look on her face as if I just hit her with a bus. She screamed at me and told me if that's how it is, then I can get out, as my corrupt being has no place in a sanctuary like her house. So I did. I packed up my stuff and I left. I went to my paternal aunt's house, and when I told her what happened, she was shocked, mainly because she knew my mom was crazy when it comes to religion, but she never thought she'd go this far. My aunt called my mom and ripped into her, said a lot of choice words directed at her, and basically left my mom crying. My mom didn't even offer a real defense. She just cried and said that everyone hates her, claiming that everyone is against her. It didn't go well for her in the aftermath, as once my maternal family got wind of what happened, they all cut her off. Apparently, my maternal grandfather went ballistic and called her up and shouted all kinds of obscenities. But as of now, I'm 18 years old, going on 19. I'm living life with my aunt, my uncle, and my cousin. Things are going good for me, but my only regret was not getting help sooner, because when I look back, I feel like an idiot for not realizing that I had such a strong family support system right behind me. You know you suck at following your religion when your instinct is to throw your kid out on the street all because they don't want to date some weird girl that you found for them. This lady actually was trying to have a prearranged marriage for her 16-year-old kid. I mean, how ridiculous and toxic is that? I definitely give some props to the original poster, because that must have been a really hard situation to be stuck in. But they showed so much courage moving forward and getting out of that situation and deciding to move in with their family, because no one should have to deal with that, especially when their family member is some religious zealot who's using their belief system as a weapon against their children. It's good to see they were able to get away from them and move on from that garbage situation. I absolutely hate my boyfriend's house, and I'm dreading moving in with him, and I honestly don't know what to do. So my boyfriend and I have been together for 6 years. Our relationship has been great. We get along well and have common interests, and don't really get into fights very much. We are pretty happy together, and we have very good futures ahead of us. We've been through everything together. I love him very much, and everything was going so well for us. But there is an issue. I have known that my boyfriend has wanted me to move out of my parents' house for a while now. Last year, I had a family tragedy that kind of set me back emotionally from moving out altogether. I figured that I would need another year or so that I could make the move and make it official. However, my boyfriend went ahead and bought a house anyways. While he lives extremely close, I definitely was a bit hurt that he made this big life decision without me. It also didn't help that I didn't love the house or the area it was in. I was grieving my family tragedy still and was just not in the place to deal with this. It just felt unfair to me, because inevitably this would eventually be my house too, and I really didn't have a choice in the matter. But I really tried to get over it, because because I didn't want to destroy his accomplishment. I just wanted this to be our decision together, but that honestly felt ripped completely out of my hands. I guess it was hard to process my grief, and yet another big thing in my life getting decided for me without warning or say. Anyway, during the home renovation process, I did have a fair amount to say in terms of the decor, the furniture, as well as the colors inside the house, so that was definitely appreciated. However, this house just never felt like a home because it wasn't what I had envisioned for both of us. Again, I really tried to look on the bright side of things here. Now that the renovations are done, he lives here. My boyfriend isn't the cleanest. I like things clean and organized, and the house just doesn't feel like a home. Every time I come here, something needs to be cleaned, put away, folded. It's to the point where I dread coming over. Could I come here and not do anything? Sure, but then it will never get done, or just get worse before he finally does address it. I just don't want it to get to that point because dirty houses make me anxious, and it's hard to picture this house being mine one day because I just hate it here completely. And now, the kicker that made this 100 times worse, after begging him not to, he gets a puppy. I asked him to hold off on making this purchase and investment because he just started living in this house alone for the first time in his life and needed to adjust to a routine. Also, his work hours are crazy. Don't get me wrong, this dog is adorable, but naturally he's a lot of work and he's very messy, obviously. Basically, this puppy is now the focus, and the house upkeep is on the back burner. That was already the problem, and now with a dog, it's magnified. We've been fighting so much because of this dog. He's completely turned our world upside down and makes me dread moving in even more. I love the dog, but just didn't ask for this commitment. Again, I'm grieving and I just don't want any of this right now. Am I being selfish or something? I've tried to tell my boyfriend how I feel, but he constantly shoots down my feelings and tells me that all I do is complain and makes me feel like garbage for starting a fight. The point is, what do? I can't imagine moving into a house that doesn't feel like a home. Am I being dramatic? Was it unfair for my boyfriend to make all of these decisions by himself, knowing that they would affect my life since clearly we planned a future together? What should I do? There's a lot going on here because it sounds like the boyfriend is completely neglectful to your feelings. You are literally grieving the loss of a family member. There was a tragedy in your family and he's just moving forward and doing all of this stuff all of the sudden. It just doesn't seem fair. You would think he would be willing to wait for you to try and get things going together, but he's making these decisions for himself and not for both of you. And that's completely unfair to your situation as well as what you plan on doing with him. And these are not cheap investments. They both involve really big commitments with time and energy. Not only keeping a house clean as well as taking care of a house, but also there's now a puppy in that house that's probably destroying everything within its sight. And that's not fair for you at all. It seems like things are moving way too fast in my opinion, and I just don't think it's a good idea to move into that house without letting him know exactly how you feel about the situation. You need to explain to him again, it seems like, that this is all moving too fast for you and you're just not comfortable with the way things are going. And if after that he still doesn't want to listen and he just gaslights you into thinking that this is your problem, then there's clearly something wrong on your boyfriend's end when it comes to this relationship. If I was in your shoes and my significant other had done all of these things without asking me or even consulting me to try and organize it and then demanded that I move into that house, I simply would not do it. I would let him know quite clearly that this is moving too fast and that I am incredibly uncomfortable with this. If anything, it would not be a bad idea to get your own place and try and take this slowly and carefully, because it seems like he's trying to sign you up for stuff that you're not ready for. And I genuinely think if you want this relationship to last, he needs to understand your side of things and not try and force you into what he wants. My boyfriend owes me about $2,000, and at this point, I honestly don't know how to address the situation. I am a 19-year-old female and my boyfriend is 24 years old, and we've been dating for about 6 months. Before I met my current boyfriend, I had only ever been in one awful 2-month relationship and had never really had an actual boyfriend. 5 months ago, it felt like I had finally gotten what I've been waiting for my entire life. He took me on an amazing first date. He was so sweet and funny. He was super attractive and exactly my type. He would grab me from behind and give me hugs every 5 minutes. He would call me beautiful and his dream girl over and over, and he just cared about me and was getting to know me so much. Every guy I had ever been with before him was just a hookup or eventually became uninterested. So him putting so much into our first date meant so much to me. We quickly started dating and it was an amazing first month. We really had no issues until he started asking me for money. I knew he didn't have a ton of money and lived paycheck to paycheck, and I had a little bit of money saved up, so I was happy I was able to help him in the first place. It started with an emergency $200 for his car, and then there was an emergency for his bills, which cost me $400, and eventually it got all the way up to $2,000. It got to the point where I was having to ask my sister for money to help him out because even I couldn't afford it. He promised me he would pay me back $100 every week, but he has only paid me $100 of money so far, and it's been 5 months. I know that this should have been a big warning flag from the beginning, and I should have left him 5 months ago, but I really just love him so much that I didn't want to leave him. Fast forward to now, and our relationship feels so different. He moved an hour away, so I only get to see him once every 2 weeks. He sends me text messages about half as much as he used to, even though we barely get to see each other. He doesn't listen or care about anything I say, and I have even caught him commenting weird and flirty things to other girls' TikTok accounts. And that's just the start of it. I've realized how little he actually cares about me, and being with him just makes me sad and miss the relationship that we used to have. I know I need to get out of this relationship at some point, but I know if I break up with him, I am never going to get the money I gave him back. I know it might sound bad and greedy to stay with him just to not lose my money, but I owe my sister $600 from what he owes me, and I work a minimum wage job. I really can't afford to pay her that much out of my savings. Also, I know this sounds sad, but he is one of my only friends right now, and I don't know what I'm going to do without him. I know I'm going to be just as sad and lonely as I was before I started dating him, and I'm going to start hooking up and putting myself in dangerous situations with random people again. I don't know what to do, but I don't want to stay in this awful situation the rest of my life. I just want things to go back to the way they used to be. What should I do? This is a terrible situation because it really seems like you want to stay with this guy, but he's just not being a good boyfriend anymore. And yeah, the first month was great. He was sweeping you off your feet and treating you like an absolute princess. So I don't blame you for having some kind of attachment to this guy, but it seems like he took advantage of your money and took as much as he could before moving an hour away, only to then treat you like garbage. This man treated you like an ATM and he got away with it. And you might not want to hear this, but I really don't think you're ever getting that money back. You can ask him, you can try and set up some kind of system where he pays you back, but I really think he got exactly what he wanted out of you and then he ran out of town, quite literally. But it's good that you know that you don't want to stay in this relationship because it does not seem like a healthy one for you specifically. You love him, but he does not love you back in the way that you would want him to. So I don't think it hurts to ask if he can pay anything back towards you, if anything, just to pay your sister back. But once he gives you that money, I really think you should move on and find somebody else because this guy does not care about you. And to be completely honest, you can and will find somebody who will treat you right and not just use you as their own personal ATM. Today, I messed up by believing that my dog could talk until the age of 20, and boy do I feel pretty stupid. This story ended yesterday, but it started around 15 years ago. My parents had a dog by the name of Blinky, the cutest English Cocker Spaniel you'll ever see. They had this from before I was born, so she was always there while I grew up. We lived pretty remote from everything, and my older sister and I didn't get along at all. So for the first 5 or 6 years of my life, I considered Blinky to be my best friend in the world. I don't remember many very specific events with her, but I do remember her always being around and by my side. And by always around, I mean she would even come along when I went to bed or the bathroom. We were perfectly happy. That is until one day my dad pulled a prank on me. And this day I remember very, very vividly. I heard my dad say something to Blinky while he was working in the garden, and I wanted to make fun of him for talking to an animal. But when I tried to, he looked me dead serious in the eyes and told me that of course he talked to Blinky. Why wouldn't he? He then said that Blinky talked to him as well. At first I thought he was joking, but he was so serious about it, and I was young and very stupid. So when he kept at it, I started believing him. When I asked, still wearily, why Blinky didn't talk to me then, he said she was very shy and didn't dare talk to many people. I think he carried on in the garden after that, but I was left dumbstruck. I went on a walk with Blinky and started talking to her, and then began asking her to then eventually begging her to talk to me, telling her that she didn't have to be shy and that I would never make fun of her, trying to help her see that she could trust me. But of course, as you could guess it, Blinky remained silent, and I was hurt. I know it may sound petty, but I was a type of kid who had a very hard time getting over things, and they would probably be very hurt if things went wrong. And this was especially true because my dearest friend in the world wouldn't trust me while she could my dad, with whom she wasn't nearly as close to. So I remember going home and bawling my eyes eyes out that night. And indeed, things didn't get back to the way they were after that. Blinky had shown her true colors apparently, and I could never fully forgive her or go back to being the closest of buddies like we were before. I didn't hate her or anything like that, and would still occasionally play with her, but the close friendship was over. Some years later, when I was about 11 or 12, Blinky finally did pass away. Something was going on with her kidneys, and she was pretty old by this point. I was pretty sad at the time, because even though we hadn't been that close anymore, she was still our dog. At that time, I didn't actively think about the talking thing that had caused the initial rift, which resulted in my world not really falling apart when she passed away. Fast forward to last night. I'm 20 years old now, and I went home to see my parents, and my older sister was also there. There aren't a lot of times all of us are together anymore, so when that happens, we tend to get a bit nostalgic and talk about memories from when we were younger. Today, for the first time in years, we were talking about Blinky, and the three of them were talking about how great and funny and loyal she was. And I mainly listened until at one point I said without thinking that I didn't really like her that much because she wouldn't talk to me. After I said this, my parents and my sister fell silent. That confused me, bringing my attention to what I had just said. And at that point, it all came together in my head, causing the biggest mind break I've ever had. Only then did I understand my dad's joke and the absurdity of its consequences. Of course, if I had actively thought about it, I would have figured it out way sooner. But the Blinky could talk thing had just been in the back of my head all this time since I was young enough to believe it as a passive piece of truth, which had never been questioned or reviewed again until now. So I explained everything that went along with it, and now because of that, my family has continuously made fun of me ever since. Needless to say, I honestly feel pretty stupid. Yeah, I would feel pretty stupid too. It's one thing to have your family be like, oh my gosh, the dog can talk to us. It's another thing entirely to believe that until you're 20 years old. So at least you can have some kind of resolution when it comes to the whole Blinky saga, and hopefully now you realize that it was just a dog and not some super smart sentient being that would only talk to your dad on occasion. An entitled Karen tries to steal my debit card off the ground, trying to use it to buy expensive things. Things got so bad that a security guard had to get involved. Here's what happened. First, a little bit of background. I had just gotten my debit card after begging my dad to help me get one for a while. I work part-time at a food chain and put all of the money I earn into that card. I'm always careful with it, and I make sure it's with me wherever I go. My dad gave me the card so he can see how I use it and if I'm using it wisely. This is kind of like a test to see if I'll be responsible with money later in life. Keep in mind, my family is not particularly rich. We're stable, but we don't consider ourselves really prominent. I use the money I get to pay for things that I like, as well as to ease some of the financial pressure that is on both of my working parents. I use it for things like games for my PC, gifts and treats I get for myself whenever I go out, as well as saving up for things that I want. So I was hanging out with my friends at the mall. We were walking, talking, and just going between stores when suddenly one of my friends, we'll call her Jay, started feeling dizzy and unwell. We knew what to do since this happened before. She would get nauseous if she walked too much without rest. My two other friends sat her down and calmed her down while I rushed to a nearby supermarket to get some water and an aspirin. I get the items and I quickly look at the registers to find them all occupied. At the end of the row of registers though, there's a self-checkout lane that was practically empty. I run towards the machine, scan my items, and take out my debit card to pay. As I bag my items, I try to wiggle the credit card back into my pocket. I had obviously failed and it fell down, but with the place being loud and me trying to be quick, I didn't notice that my card had fallen on the ground. I run out to meet up with my friends and make sure Jay is alright, and that's when I realized that my card wasn't with me. I quickly scanned around the bench we were sitting in and confirmed that I probably dropped it at the self-checkout. I race back to the checkout area and I see only one person there, and this is where the entitled Karen comes into play. She was scanning a few pricey items, stuff that the average person would probably not buy if they wanted to. I approach her and I ask her about my card when I see that she's holding it in her hands. I politely tap her shoulder and ask her for my card. She turns and gives an expression I can only hope people of her kind can make. She waves the thing in front of me and says,
"Back up, kid. This is mine. Why would a child like you even have this?"
Now, I'm a very standard 6'1" male with a baby face, so it was easy to assume I was still going through puberty. "Ma'am, the card is mine, please give it back." At this point, this woman is now ignoring me and was reaching her hand towards the scanning machine to pay for her things. I glance at the screen with her list of items, and I I am horrified to see the order amount to the equivalent of $200. My card had one of those chips that allows you to simply place the card on the sensor to pay without having to physically swipe the card. I quickly put my hand over the sensor and tell her to hand it over right now. I didn't scream it, but I said it sternly enough for it to appear like a threat. What happens next still makes me cringe to this day. The entitled Karen fake falls on the ground and starts cowering behind her arms, screaming,
Thief! Thief! He wanted to rob me. He hit me to steal from me. Help!
This immediately catches the attention of everyone in the registers behind us. And this is where my savior comes in, a very nice security guard. He approaches us and tries to understand what's going on. He approaches the woman at first to see what happened, where she starts to spit slurs and racist remarks at me because of the color of my skin. For reference, I'm Middle Eastern, and where I live, some locals have very unique views on us. The officer, I later learned, was also Middle Eastern. He helps her up, and turning to me, he asks me in Arabic, our native tongue, what happened. This took both me and the entitled Karen by surprise, since this guy did not look like he could speak this language. So I explain everything in Arabic to the security guard, with the entitled Karen being ignored as she mumbles and growls. After hearing what I had to say, he ordered us both to come back into the back rooms so he can check the tapes. At this point, we are both taken by other security guards into the security man's office to wait. After about 5 minutes of awkward silence waiting with this entitled Karen, the security guard comes back and demands my card back from this Karen. She then bursts into a ball of sobs and tears.
I'm a single mom and I need the money.
And comes up with this whole story. I'm there watching while I die inside from the amount of discomfort I'm currently in. On one hand, I know this woman is lying and is just looking for any excuse to steal from me. But on the other hand, she is a 40-something-year-old woman that probably has kids, and instead of being responsible and owning up to her actions, she's playing the victim and throwing a tantrum like a baby. The security guard confiscates my card, and after confirming that it was mine, they both let us out separately. I met back up with my friends and told them what happened. And as I'm telling the story, I catch the entitled Karen in the corner of my eye, walking by with what looks like her husband and a teenage daughter. And at that point, I look back up and flip her the bird. She notices, but before she could do anything, her husband looks towards me and gives me an apologetic look and moves his wife forward. Their teenage daughter later came back as I recognized her from school. We talked for a bit and she later apologized for her mom's actions. A month later, and me and her are now dating. And I have even been over to her house. Her mom wasn't that talkative to me, go figure. I was all smug and tried to be nice to her. The entitled Karen's husband was a genuine good man with a good heart, and I'm glad his daughter resembled him more than her mother. In fact, I'm writing this before I head out on a date, so please wish me some luck. That's a crazy turn of events. Who could possibly predict that you would start dating the daughter of the lady that tried to rob you? I honestly can't believe that someone would try and pull that and pretend like you tried to steal from her as well as hurt her. She was straight up trying to rob you and spend all this money on your card. I also think it's brave that you want to date her daughter, since this lady is absolutely unhinged, it seems like. But hopefully the relationship works out, and hopefully your debit card never gets taken like that by this entitled Karen. My boyfriend admitted to me that he purposefully makes me anxious and upset because he enjoys how it makes me act, and he does all this just so he can comfort me after the fact, and I don't know what to do. My boyfriend and I have been together for just under a year, and we've been living together for about 3 months. It felt a little soon to move in, and I was struggling for other options, and he has his own place, so he suggested that I just move in with him. I pay half of all the bills and half of his mortgage, so I'm not freeloading or anything like that. I definitely pay my fair share. He's really nice to me a lot of the times, but he can also be pretty mean. Not violent or abusive or anything like that, but he gets frustrated with me and talks down to me. Even when he's being nice, he makes fun of me, especially around certain friends. The thing is, I'm not very smart. I'm not just saying that to talk badly about myself, it's just a fact. I did pretty horrible in school and pretty much failed everything. I'm pretty slow when it comes to getting stuff that people are telling me, and I'm always messing up. I currently have 2 jobs, one at a cafe and one at a bar, and I earn enough to get by, but I can't even go a single day without getting laughed at or yelled at for screwing something up. And it's not like I'm not trying, I really am. Sometimes I think I'm so anxious about making mistakes that it makes my situation even worse. So I'm used to people getting frustrated with me or making fun of me. Even my friends do it. So I don't know at what point it stops being normal and starts being a problem, if that makes any sense. I've always tried to just laugh it off because because I don't know what else to do, so it's kind of my own fault that no one knows it actually hurts. A lot of the jokes my friends make are about me being good looking as well as stupid, so I guess maybe they see me as a fair target and don't realize I'm just insecure. My boyfriend, on the other hand, is educated and successful, and obviously I'm really not. He quite often makes jokes around his friends about me being young, pretty, and stupid, and him being the one with the career and the money. I hate when he says that because it sounds like he's only interested in how I look, and it also makes it sound like I'm using him for money, and I honestly have never done that with him or anyone else. I always pay my way. I tried telling him that, but it turned into him saying that I was only interested in money, and that was what I was digging for, all because I'm keeping track of what I pay. He's more confident and expresses himself better, so when I argue, I end up backing down and apologizing 99% of the time. He always gets annoyed with me easily, and sometimes it feels like he misunderstands what I'm trying to say, and he's getting annoyed about stuff I literally never even said. Sometimes he'll be really obviously angry and won't speak to me for days at a time, and won't even tell me what I've done wrong. Even after he's forgiven me, he won't tell me. It stresses me out so much because I hate people being upset with me, and I hate feeling like I messed up and not knowing why. I get so anxious I can't even eat, and I sometimes end up throwing up because of the stress. I sometimes feel like I would do anything just to fix this problem. These arguments happen really often, and I feel like I'm constantly anxious in case he goes from being nice to me to just being cold. He's currently being very nice to me after a few days of being really upset, but then last night he admitted out of the blue that he does this stuff on purpose because he enjoys it. We were in bed together cuddling, and he said that he likes how desperate I am to make him happy when I think he's angry at me, and he enjoys comforting me when I'm upset. He was a bit under the influence when he said it, so I don't know if he meant to say that or not, or if he remembers saying that at all. I didn't say anything at the time because I was really in shock, and I didn't really know what to think, or if I was misreading it or something like that, but I can't stop thinking about it, and it's really creeping me out. I don't know if he meant that he's literally making up arguments for fun, or if the arguments are real and he just enjoys it, but either way, I feel so anxious and insecure all the time, and it's just horrible. I just feel so sick of the thought that he might be making me feel this way on purpose. I don't know what to say or do, because maybe I just misunderstood him, and I know I'm definitely oversensitive about certain things, so I don't want to make a big thing over nothing. I don't have anyone in real life I feel like asking because it's so embarrassing, and I don't really know how to explain this. My friends all think I'm a bit of a joke anyway, in case they just make fun of me. They've done it to me in the past, and it really hurts, and I really don't think I can handle being made fun of at the moment. What should I do? I'm gonna spell this out pretty clearly. This man is being emotionally abusive. For him to intentionally make you feel like garbage just to then come in and try and be your savior is so unbelievably toxic and gross. In my opinion, this is not a healthy relationship. He likes making you feel insecure and horrible. It's fun for him. This is like a game of some kind. He's got you on this weird leash and he just keeps pulling it whenever he gets bored. This is honestly not fair for you, and you can absolutely get out of this relationship if you wanted to. You do not need to stick around with someone who's going to intentionally make you feel terrible. So if I was in your shoes and I started having these realizations that my partner was treating me like garbage on purpose, I would first realize that this is a giant red flag glaring in the sky, and then I would make plans to get out. There's absolutely no way I would live in this kind of situation, and there's no way I would deal with these supposed friends making fun of me at the drop of a hat, because I would know for a fact that I deserve so much better than this. So maybe it's time for you to trust your instincts and get out of there, because this relationship is incredibly toxic and you do not need this in your life. My boyfriend has made some seriously bad financial decisions, and this is starting to negatively affect our relationship, and I don't know what to do. My boyfriend and I have been together for 1.5 years. We have talked about our future together, and if all is good, we want to be married to each other down the road. But recently, he made some bad financial decisions that has unraveled the lack of financial discipline he has had over the years, and it made me question our long-term stability and my trust in him. For a bit of background, he makes more money than I do, and he always has in our working years. He was on track to purchase a home, and I was going to eventually move in and contribute to his mortgage. About a week ago, his employer started laying off a lot of employees, and his job became unstable. He still has a job, but he is not sure if he'll last long. Due to the uncertainty, I decided to contribute some money towards his down payment as well as the closing cost. And at that point, we started to brainstorm brainstorm to come up with some alternative plans to keep the home in case he loses his job. But yesterday, my boyfriend confesses to me that he invested in some meme stock with a big chunk of his money and it is not doing well. I ask if this could affect his home purchase and he says yes, to the point where we have to give up the house. He did this in hopes of gaining some additional cash to fill things in for the new home. At this point, I am shocked and I have so many questions. I'm wondering why he didn't try and set money aside for an emergency, or at least most importantly, deposit it towards the house. He also used some of my money to invest in these meme stocks that resulted in a massive loss, which also resulted in him not having enough money to put down the payment on the house. He has told me that he invests most of his money, if not a majority of it, into the stock market, but I had no idea that meant literally all of his money. Even if I wanted to help out, I couldn't afford the place that he's trying to purchase. Even if I did, I would be broke, and I don't think it's a good idea to do such a thing, especially as an unmarried couple. Maybe it could work with a contract, but this has not been discussed in depth. My boyfriend is regretful, and he feels so sorry for the stupid and greedy decisions he's made. At this point, I honestly just feel like he has breached our trust for not telling me about such a decision before it happened, especially one that could affect the both of us and our plans. This overall really makes me wonder if he would do something like this in the future when we really are married. Now I'm at a point where I'm wondering if there's any way to salvage this house by me contributing more money or making a side contract about this contribution. He is going to be on the deed and the mortgage, but maybe I can be on the deed for paying this deposit? Or is this just feeding his wrongdoing and we should just give up on the house? Is this something that we can even overcome in the first place? Is this doomed to fail? Because it honestly kind of feels like that. What should I do? I think it's a big red flag that your boyfriend was more inclined to spend money on meme stocks than being financially responsible and taking care of what needs to be done. In my honest opinion, I would give up on that house. You can't afford it, you can't make it work, and going into debt for something like this, with all things considered and who your boyfriend is, just does not seem worth it. Also, getting into a housing contract with a man who parlayed your money on meme stocks without your permission would be incredibly stupid in my opinion. He's very likely to be out of a job soon based on what you described. This is just not the time to buy a house with this man. I understand that you had your heart set on this house, and it's probably something that you really wanted, but it's time to let it go and cut your losses. If I was in your shoes, I would need him to prove that he's going to learn from this mistake and never do anything like this again. This is your financial security we're talking about. This is not something that he can play around with and expect to just get a slap on the wrist. That is not fair for you, especially when your money was involved. So I would take a very good hard look at this relationship, because if he's going to play with your money and use it on meme stocks that are incredibly volatile and will probably fail, then I'm not sure that this relationship is best for you. I am starting to feel a lot of resentment towards my partner because she makes a lot more money than I do, and I honestly don't know what to do. I'm sure this is going to draw some criticism, but here we go. The first thing I want to get out of the way is that I have zero problems with women making more money than me. The issue is that I feel like she's kind of stingy about certain things. We've been dating for about 3 to 4 years. I make about $100,000 a year, and my girlfriend makes somewhere between $400,000 to $500,000 a year. To be perfectly honest, I'm not exactly sure the precise number because she's kind of private about that stuff, naturally. Also, we both live in a medium cost of living area. About $1,200 a month for a one-bedroom apartment is typical for the area. We generally live fairly modest lives in terms of how we spend our money. Our biggest expense is probably eating out, which we do quite a bit, but it's honestly never at a fancy place. Earlier this year, she was concerned that she was spending more money than me, so we agreed to take a look at our credit card statements from the last couple of months and tally up everything that we had spent, including Uber rides as well as quick trips to the grocery store. After everything was accounted for, she had a great deal more transactions than me, but I had larger transactions than her, so I had actually spent a few $100s more over the course of about 2 months. At this point, it's honestly hard for me to articulate exactly why I'm irritated, because on one hand, I feel pretty strongly that things should be split evenly in a relationship, but on the other hand, I'm annoyed at how stingy she is given her financial position. For example, during holidays, her gifts don't leave me feeling great. For birthdays and Christmas, she usually gets me things that provide her benefit. Stuff like a fancy towel that stays at her apartment, or the brand of fancy body wash she likes for my apartment. To be fair, I did tell her that it actually smelled good, so it wasn't too bad. Last Christmas, her gift to me was a package of extra phone chargers, which came shortly after she complained explained that she couldn't find at my house. The other part of this that is really hard for me to articulate exactly what I mean, but I guess I'm just a little irritated that she is rarely generous. Over the last year, there have been a couple of instances where she has taken me to dinner after I've hit a career milestone, but not much else. Again, it's hard for me to explain this because it's not like I want to be showered with gifts or anything. I just find it a little irritating how concerned she is with us squaring up an $11 Uber ride at the end of the month. Also, we're planning a big vacation to a different country, which is going to cost quite a bit of money, and for some reason, I can't help but feel a little annoyed that she's not offering to chip in just a little bit more money when she makes about 5 times my salary and has so much more discretionary money to spend. Well, I guess to be fair, she did offer to pay an extra $200 for one of our hotel stays because she wanted to stay somewhere really nice. I guess I'm just really confused. All of this is really under the surface and very subtle, so it's hard to describe where I'm coming from, I think. Am I being selfish here and expecting too much? What should I do? I can see where you're coming from, where you kind of wish she was more involved and ponied up just a little bit more money to kind of compensate for the fact that she makes a lot of money. Like, what does your girlfriend do? She makes almost $500,000 a year. First off, good for her. And second off, I think on that same note, just because she makes a lot more money than you doesn't mean that she's now required to pay for everything. I think if you're concerned about that, then you definitely need to talk to her and have that conversation. But to just outright expect that and then to get upset when it doesn't just straight up happen, I don't think it's very fair for your girlfriend. Like, when it comes to gifts and stuff, you need to communicate with her and say to her, hey, I don't feel like you're getting gifts for me. I feel like you're getting gifts for yourself, and it just doesn't feel genuine. Maybe explaining that to her can help her understand that, hey, maybe I'm not thinking about my boyfriend in this situation. She's not going to be able to read your mind and know exactly how to best suit your needs. And if one of your needs is feeling celebrated and appreciated through gifts, then I think it's time to tell her and say, hey, I want this to be more about me when you give gifts. That might be a possible solution to the problem. But on that same note, it definitely seems like she's a little self-centered in certain aspects. So I can totally see where the frustration's coming from. But I think overall, if she really cares and if she really wants to be there for you, if you explain where you're coming from, I think you might be able to come to some kind of compromise where you both understand each other and you can both move forward happy. Because this kind of thing can be frustrating. And I think if you just talk it out, you might be able to figure out some kind of common ground. An entitled Karen keeps trying to steal food from McDonald's as people are checking out, but eventually security catches on and she gets caught red-handed. Here's what happened. At the mall near my house, there's a McDonald's with a poor design flaw. It has an exit in the restaurant and not the typical mall exit. So this entitled Karen mentioned in the title is a food thief. To be honest, I think food should be free and can understand those who struggle to buy food, but this lady is the exact opposite. She pulls up in a nice car and has a Chanel handbag to boot. Needless to say, she is not poor. She will slink in and kind of just join the line. In this McDonald's, you can see all the way to the back, so you can see them preparing orders. So this entitled Karen will sit there and just wait. No order, no nothing, just waiting. People in the mall are oblivious and won't come to the counter right away. So this entitled Karen has figured out the sweet spot so she can get some free food. She'll wait until someone orders a kid's meal. That way she can see it being loaded up and brought to the front. The oblivious employee will then walk up to the front, call out the order number that some patron is actually waiting on, and this entitled Karen swoops in like a vulture and happily takes the order, saying something like,
Yep, that's me.
She'll even show a blank piece of paper, and because these McDonald's employees are not paid nearly enough to deal with this, they usually don't notice or even pay attention. And once this happens, that's when the fireworks kick off. She'll take the bag and slip out of there as fast as possible. Then when the real person shows up to try and get their food, the underpaid employee will look puzzled and the customer will freak out on them. And it's only then that the employees will realize that they just handed that food to a thief. This entitled Karen does this so much, and she gets away with it so often that eventually karma came crashing down on her. And luckily enough, I just happened to be there for this meltdown. So I was coming home from school and I was incredibly hungry, waiting for my food. But I personally did not have a kid's meal on me. So it was much to my surprise when this entitled Karen walked up to me. So I just order my food and wait. But when she arrives next to me, the McDonald's employees don't even notice. But I almost immediately recognize her presence and I become pretty paranoid as to what's about to happen. She waits for a little while and then they call my order, a hamburger with a strawberry milkshake. As I'm pushing through the crowd to go up and get my order, this entitled Karen butts in and says,
Hey there, that's my order. Thank you so much. My kid'll love this.
I finally make it up to the front and I see what's happening. So I say, no, I'm sorry, there must must be a mistake. Maybe I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure this is my order. See, this is my receipt. I pull out my receipt and I show it to the employee. And at this point, I notice that the entitled Karen is looking rather nervous. She says,
"No, you're mistaken. I paid for this already, and I don't appreciate this."
The Karen starts to get a little bit hostile all of a sudden. So the employee, wanting to try and get this taken care of, asks both of us, "Okay, maybe there's a mix-up. Can I please see your receipts?" The second this employee asks that, this entitled Karen starts to come up with some weird excuse about how she lost her receipt and she
Can't find it.
Now, as this is going on, and without me realizing it, mall security had rolled up. And what happens next absolutely blew my mind. This security guard says, is there a problem here? And then as soon as he notices this entitled Karen, he says, "Miss, you can't be here. You're banned from the mall and you need to leave." This entitled Karen then explodes, and she just starts screaming,
No, 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 no. This is for my kid. I paid for this.
I am just standing here in shock watching this lady melt down. I had a receipt, but she definitely didn't. She then pulled out some old crusty looking receipt and tried to pass this off to the employee and the security guard. But she pulled out the wrong type of receipt because this receipt was for Walmart. The security guard then says, "Ma'am, you know you're not allowed in here. This is your second warning. Now you can either leave or we'll call the police." After the security guard said this, the entitled Karen stormed out. And after that encounter, I quickly got my stuff and left at the same time because I was done. As she was leaving, she was tugging away a small kid into a nice car. And you could tell that this was an expensive car just by the looks of it. But even if she wasn't rich, it absolutely blows my mind that she wasn't willing to pay $8 for what I paid for. But you know what? Entitled people are some of the dumbest people you will ever meet. This is really toxic behavior. It sounds like this lady can absolutely afford these meals at McDonald's, but she decides to try and work the system and steal from actually paying customers. I mean, how gross is that? And worst of all, I bet you she tries this at other stores as well, which is just completely unfair. I mean, she obviously has the money. Why not just pay for the meal and be honest, instead of trying to steal like a common criminal? But you know what? I kind of hope she does come back to that mall and tries this again, because I personally think getting caught for stealing is a nice way of teaching someone a valuable lesson that stealing an $8 meal from McDonald's is simply not worth it. An absolute psychopath goes on a rampage at the local hotel I worked at. Things got so bad that the cops had to show up and take him down. Here's what happened. So I was working the night shift one night at my hotel, and I was in the back just minding my own business. Then I noticed the flickering of lights from the front desk, and I find a man at the pantry just opening different products and eating it. I called out to the man to tell him to stop, and then all of a sudden he looks my way and begins to chase after me. He chased me all the way to the back rooms where I locked myself in my office away from this man. He even tried to wriggle the door open once I locked it. I have security cameras in my office, so I watch as this absolute psychopath takes off his pants and starts walking around in his light blue boxers. At this point, I stopped what I was doing and called the police and explained to the cops that some psychopath was trespassing at our hotel and that I need help right away. They told me that they will be there shortly. At that point, I watched a series of events that really just confused me overall. For starters, he grabbed a burrito and threw it in the microwave, possibly trying to heat it up to get a quick snack or something. He then walked towards the front desk and, you guessed it, he stripped his blue boxers as well as his shirt and started walking around without anything on. This psychopath then does a number 2 on the chair of the front desk and starts rubbing things in the carpet, if you know what I mean. This dude was acting like he was working the front desk absolutely undressed and using the computer. All the while, I'm waiting desperately for the cops to finally show up, and I'm watching through the security cameras as he is absolutely defiling every single item at the front desk, placing objects where they shouldn't go, as well as putting his greasy, disgusting body all over the front desk. It was an absolute nightmare. It took about 20 minutes until the cops came, where I quickly bolted out as soon as I saw them. I let them know exactly what our special guest was up to and all the disgusting things that I had just witnessed him doing. Unfortunately, as soon as I left my office, this psychopath made a break for it and ran into my office, where I was worried he would cause more damage to our confidential items or even my personal devices still in the office. The cops then had to take about 8 minutes until they were into the office, tackled the man, and handcuffed him. They then dragged him out of the back office and sat him down on the lobby couch, where the remnants of his number 2 was still on the couch cushion. This psychopath then shockingly exclaimed, "Am I getting arrested?" After a few minutes of interrogation by the police, this psychopath claimed that he was sleepwalking, saying that he got absolutely wasted at a concert and that his girlfriend was in the room sleeping at the moment. The cops made me sign a waiver for trespassing, and I made the guy clean up everything that he destroyed, and we had to eventually throw away the chairs. This man then confessed to us that this is not the first time he had done something like this, saying that he had done this when he was younger, back right before he turned 20 years old, which absolutely blew my mind. How crazy was that guy in this story? This guy literally went on a disgusting rampage across this hotel, and then when he's getting caught by the police, he says, I was sleepwalking. Yeah, sure you were, buddy. To be honest, I'm surprised this story didn't end up with him being in jail, because going around on a rampage, breaking into the back office of some hotel, as well as turning yourself into a biological hazard, can't possibly be legal. My girlfriend gets really upset and angry anytime I go off and do my own thing, instead of sitting and only spending time with her. And honestly, I'm at a point where I don't know what to do. My girlfriend and I are both 21 years old, and we've been together for a year. She moved in with me a few months ago for a few reasons. For starters, I live 4 hours away for college, and she hated the long distance while I was away at college. Also, we desperately needed a sixth roommate. In fact, even to make the transition better, one of my roommates asked her to move in, since it was time for us to renew the lease, and everyone else that we had asked had declined, so we needed to find somebody. When she moved in, we decided to have separate bedrooms, as we thought that it would ease the transition and give us our own space if needed. My girlfriend works full-time, and once school starts, I will be quitting my full-time job and going to classes instead. When it comes to our relationship, I feel like I'm not able to do what I want to do when I want to do it, whether that's by myself or with her tagging along. Regardless of the circumstances, she always gets mad anytime I do something that I want to do. She always dictates what we watch, and if I'm watching something, she sometimes asks, or rather will demand, to put something else on, and if I even imply that we can wait until my show is over, she throws a fit and has a temper tantrum. She will then say things like, "Oh, you can just go upstairs and finish your show if it's that important." But with that in mind, if I respond in the same way that she responds to me, she gets sad and acts like it's the end of the world. There has been a few times where she just changes it without asking, and when I said something, she gets mad at me again and tells me she doesn't want to watch it, and then reiterates that I can go upstairs and watch it by myself. In other situations, she just gives me this death stare and walks upstairs. Then she starts sending text messages to me because she misses me and wants me to come cuddle with her, and she acts all sad to try and pull me away from my stuff. But in that same sense, if I do leave and watch my own stuff upstairs, she still gets mad at me or pretends to be sad that I'm not spending time with her. It's all very confusing and just not fair. If I were to go upstairs or wherever I want on my own accord and do what I want by myself, she gets upset. And if I spend too long on that activity, she'll still get mad and claim that I'm ignoring her. She gets sad and wants me to give her attention, but refuses to come to my room and demands that I do what she wants. And yet, she's always able to go off and do her own thing whenever she wants to do it, but hates it when I do the exact same thing. She'll claim it isn't fair, gets sad, upset, and thinks that I'm ignoring her. And this is a cycle on repeat. Once it was the weekend, I spent 8 o'clock in the morning to 1 o'clock p.m. watching her shows with her while she mostly just scrolled through TikTok and didn't pay attention. Then I spent the next hour or two cleaning up the house. My girlfriend texted me while I was cleaning the bathroom with a sad emoji saying that she misses me. As a side note, she didn't help to clean at all, nor did anyone else. When I finished cleaning, she went to take a 4-hour nap, and I took that chance to finally play some video games, as I haven't felt like I've been able to for months now. I played games with a friend for about 8 hours. I took a few breaks when I noticed that my girlfriend was up and asked her if she would like to do something in general or for dinner, but she said no to everything I asked her. When I was finished playing video games for the first time in months, my girlfriend was incredibly upset with me, and when I told her that I need time to myself to decompress just like she does, she gave me a death stare and angrily said, "You played video games for 8 hours," even though she was asleep for half of those hours. Later, she said she felt like I was ignoring her and didn't want to do anything with her, even though I was texting her, taking breaks to talk to her, and even asked if she wanted to do anything. It's like this every time. If I go up to my room to do work, play video games, or whatever I want, she will give me a puppy dog stare and whine like I'm abandoning her. Then text message me saying she wants me to spend time with her. Or, on the other hand, she will get mad and think that I'm angry with her or that I'm just ignoring her, which just isn't true. Sometimes she will walk into my room and say she demands my attention, and sometimes she will walk in and start start hitting things off my desk, stare at me with puppy dog eyes, or give me a death stare and then just leave. I don't know why she can't just come into my room and lounge around like I do in her room all the time. Her reasoning is literally that it's just not her room, so she very rarely cares to spend time in it with me. At night after work, when she's watching her shows and I got bored, I tried to go into another room and do what I want, but I'm afraid she's going to get mad or sad and possibly throw a fit. On the weekends, I really want to go for a hike or do something outside of the house, but she always says no, and I feel like if I go by myself, she will just get angry with me. Some days I really want to go play baseball or do anything, but it's the same thing. She's more than welcome to come with me. It's not like I want to do these things just to get away from her, but I just want to do things outside of the house. And to top it all off, I can't even go home for the weekend, even though we live in the same hometown. She will refuse to sleep at my parents' house and would rather sleep at her home on the couch. But if I do that and we stay at our own homes, she will just be text messaging me like crazy, implying that she's sad, upset, and very angry that I'm not with her. I'm at a point where I really don't know what to do. I love my girlfriend, but I feel like she wants my attention all the time no matter what, and it's gotta be on her terms. I feel so restricted in this relationship, as if I can't do what I want. What should I do? This girlfriend is so overbearing and controlling, it's ridiculous. Literally anything this guy does, she has something to say about it. Going into your other room to spend some alone time and decompress? Oh, I'm upset and you hate me, right? Gonna go play video games with your friends for the first time in months? I can't believe you would do that to me. It's ridiculous. Give me a break. This behavior is so toxic, and it really is good that this guy is seeing this. If I was in this relationship, I would go nuts. And if I was in your shoes, I probably would have broken up with her by this point. Because she's not actually sad, she's not actually upset, she's just trying to manipulate you. And this has gotten so far that it's just becoming obnoxious. Like the original poster seems like a caged human who can't do anything they want. They get guilt-tripped and gaslit over the smallest things. I mean, how obnoxious can you possibly get? So in my opinion, it's either time to put down some serious boundaries, or it might be time for you to move out, because this behavior has gotta change. Otherwise, I don't see this relationship really working out. I had every intention of living with my girlfriend all the way up until she gave me an ultimatum, and now I don't know what to do. The title essentially summarizes my current situation, but for additional context, I've been dating my girlfriend for over 3 years now, and I would otherwise describe the relationship as really good. We communicate well, we have common life goals, and we spend a lot of time together. A year into our relationship, I moved across town to try and live in the same neighborhood as her. Since then, I've run into financial troubles due to family debt as well as some health problems that unfortunately required me to quit my job to help out my family. My girlfriend, on the other hand, has a solid salary, and her job really pays her well. Over the past year, we've talked about living together, and I love the idea. Both our places are too small, so we would have to find a new place, which is fantastic. It would be a great opportunity to build a home together. The only problem is that when we started looking, I couldn't afford my share of the rent at a larger place that she would want to live in. But even when it's brought up, she doesn't want to move to a cheaper neighborhood. Since then, prices in our city have gone through the roof, with many places doubling in the last 6 months alone. Looking at rental sites went from being this fun activity we both enjoyed to one which I would dread, as each time we'd realize that there are fewer and more expensive options. Inevitably, these situations would end with my girlfriend in tears, because she felt like we're not building a life together and that our relationship was in limbo. Naturally, it became a subject I avoided, from small things like not pointing out rental signs whenever we would be out, to removing home renovation shows on our Netflix list. I did my best to steer conversations away from the dreaded topic. My financial situation hasn't changed, and neither has her willingness to compromise on the location and the quality of the house. Otherwise, I thought everything was fine, and that it was just a matter of time until I could return to a more conventional employment situation and moving in together, as well as getting engaged and eventually getting married. But right now, it just feels so daunting. All this came to head last week when she dropped an emotional bomb on me, saying that she felt like I did not love her and that she somehow was not enough to excite me to want to live with her. But both of these statements were absolutely incorrect. Eventually, the conversation ended with an ultimatum. Either we live together by the end of the year or she's gonna call it quits. I love her, and the thought of breaking up feels like the ground opening up beneath my feet. I got to work and found the best listings I could find and figured out how much I could potentially make by Airbnb being my current place to offset the rent. It's going to be a stretch, but I'll make it work somehow. The problem now is that the way this conversation went down has killed my desire to live together. I feel like I have been robbed of my autonomy, and I'm now being put into unnecessary financial stress. This has now made me question if everything else I have ever done for her to show her that I love her has ever meant anything. What should I do? This is one of those things that's just absolutely inevitable. You can't avoid this conversation because this is exactly what you guys were planning on doing. I think if you're having doubts about moving in at this point, you really need to communicate this with her. Also, I think it's time to get a job again. You're 29 years old and you don't have a job, and I can kind of understand why your girlfriend would be upset. The original poster also went on to say that his girlfriend is willing to pay more rent to kind of compensate for the situation he's in, but he simply won't let her, which is kind of weird. So it leads me to believe that this guy is really insecure with the fact that his girlfriend makes a lot more money than he does. I think if anything, it's time to suck it up and get rid of this ego. Tell her straight up what you can afford monthly, and that when you have a steady job again, you'll be willing to pay more. Regardless of what you do, it's time to get a job and to get to work. Because I can completely understand where your girlfriend's coming from, and unfortunately, she kind of has a point. She is 31 years old and she wants to settle down with someone. And honestly, from my perspective, it seems like you're kind of dragging your feet. And if you're not careful, you might lose the relationship that you really enjoy if you just stand still and not do anything, which in my opinion would be a very bad decision. My husband hates my family and doesn't want to see them ever again, stating that they make his life harder. And I honestly don't know what to do. Well, the title says it all. My husband does not like my family, especially my mother. They can be a massive pain in the butt, but they always have good intentions. My mother wants to help and has a lot of guilt for not being a better mother earlier in my life. For some context, we're planning to sell our house and have been cleaning like crazy the past 2 days. Today, for example, my mother wanted to help prune our garden while we were away for the day to save us some time and the headache. I told her not to, but when we came back, I saw her in our garden finishing up sweeping the floor. She had clipped a tree back so much that we have completely lost the privacy we had from next door and the street across from us. Granted, I should have said something right then and there with her, because she's ignored our wishes multiple times, but I didn't feel like it was the appropriate time or the place, as our neighbor was in the garden and could hear everything. I said thank you for helping and I sent her on her way, thinking that I will talk to her later because I know my husband would be very upset. And as it turns out, he was completely furious. He destroyed the remaining plants in the garden and made a huge mess. He even destroyed a new plant we had just bought inside the house too. He then called my mother all kinds of names and tells me that he doesn't want to move anymore because my mother will just do what she wants to in our new house. For the record, my mom has done this to our garden once before and I told her off then as well. He says he doesn't want to see her or my family ever again. He says that they make his life so much harder, explaining to me that he's upset that I'm not on his side, which is another reason for him for wanting to drop out of moving. I'm absolutely devastated and torn. She was just trying to help, even though she ignored our wishes. My husband has every right to feel annoyed, but I feel like his reaction was completely over the top. I really need some outside perspective on this. What should I do? It feels like there's a lot of details that are missing here because it is absolutely unhinged and uncalled for your husband to just go nuts and start destroying all these plants. Either your husband has a very short temper and some crazy anger management issues that he needs to work out, or this is the straw that broke the camel's back and he just went nuts. Because based on what I'm hearing, I could see either one of these being the case. If I'm willing to guess, it seems like your mom's behavior is kind of a pattern. She comes over, she's a little too intrusive, and she does things that you don't want her to do, and your husband definitely doesn't want her to do. And then instead of saying something, you just kind of let it slide and say, okay, well, thanks for helping. I'm going to take a wild guess, and I could be wrong, that this is definitely what's going on, and that your husband is at his wit's end. He's probably so exhausted having your family step into your life as well as his, and you doing nothing about it. In my opinion, I think the ball is in your court for getting your mom to stop being so intrusive. And maybe you don't see it that way, but your husband clearly does. I mean, just look what he did to your garden and the new plant you just bought. He straight up destroyed it because he was so upset over this. And while I don't think destroying things is a good answer to figuring out emotions and stuff like that, it's probably the case where he just hit a boiling point and he just could not deal with this anymore. So I think you need to set some very serious, healthy boundaries with your mom and say, listen, you cannot come over anymore without telling us, because clearly she's comfortable going over to your house without you knowing about it. And if I was in your husband's shoes, I would be upset about this as well. This lady's invading my personal privacy, as well as doing things to my home without my permission. I mean, you said it yourself. She chopped up awesome tree that was giving you some semblance of privacy from your neighbors. Now that's completely taken away. So if anything, I think you're the one that's going to have to talk to her and say, hey, you can't come over like that anymore. Otherwise, this is just going to cause more friction with your husband. An entitled Karen tried to rob me of my Lego set at a store. And after harassing me and saying terrible things, I ended up getting revenge. Here's what happened. For some context to the story, I have loved Legos ever since I was 4 years old. The other day, I was at the mall to buy some Legos, since I had lucked out on winning some money at a small-scale esports tournament. I picked the set I wanted and noticed it was the last one of its kind on the shelf. I didn't take much notice of this, but oh boy did it cause me problems later on. As I was walking out of the store, I saw an entitled Karen who was walking around the store, turned around and came right towards me. From her crappy hairstyle and her angry look on her face, I knew what was about to happen. She approached me and the following conversation happened. She said,
"The set you're holding is out of stock in the store, so could you give it to me?"
I was genuinely confused by what she was asking me, but I decided I'd turn her down because this was just ridiculous. I looked at her and I said, sorry, but no, I just got this set for myself. I can't give it to you. She then says,
"Listen, kid, there's no way someone as old as you still plays with Legos like a baby. Now give it here so I can buy it at the counter."
I would have given her the benefit of the doubt about not knowing that I'd bought it already, except I already said that I had bought it and that she was there watching me buy it right behind me. Also, she literally said I was too young for Legos, but called me a kid at the same time. I looked at her and I said, sorry ma'am, I just bought it and I cannot give it to you. She laughed at this point.
"There's no way someone as young as you can carry around their money in a store like this. You're probably waiting for your mom to come here and give you the money to buy it. Now hand it over."
At this point, I got upset, since she not only insulted my age twice, but also somehow thinks I'm too old to play Legos, but too young to have money. So I point to the age range on the box and it says 1 to 99. I say, as you can see, I'm very much within the age to play with Legos. And may I ask why you're here? Since if your brain isn't functioning properly, you're probably over 99 anyways. And after I said that, this entitled Karen's face was red hot with anger. She then began screaming at me.
"Listen here, you stupid brat. Give me that set or you'll face the consequences."
I just said, oh wow, I didn't know there was consequences for not giving stuff that you bought to some random person.
"Do you even know who I am? I can get you, as well as every other filthy person you know, banned from this mall for good. Now give me that set."
I honestly did not believe her when she said that, because this mall was owned by multiple shareholders and not just one single person. Plus, even if she knew just a few of them, banning a person required something actually bad to happen between me and the mall. I'm not giving my set to some random weirdo who thinks she owns everything around her. I then just stared at her with a bring it on look on my face, and this is where she went even more wild. She said,
"People like you don't deserve to have things like that, you little brat. Now give it to me. My daughter wants it more than you."
At this point, a few people were starting to stare from around the store, especially after she started to raise her voice. At this point, I just doubled down and said, I'm not giving you anything I bought with my money. This entitled Karen's kid, who was also playing in the Lego area of the store, came over to their mom when they heard the commotion. The moment I looked at her face, I felt so bad for her because she was absolutely overridden with embarrassment. She tried to butt in as we argued.
"Mom, please stop. I don't even want that set. People are staring."
The entitled Karen then turned to her kid and said,
"Stay out of this."
The kid looked scared and just backed off behind her mom. Then the entitled Karen looked at me, and if looks could make someone dissolve, this mom would have eviscerated me.
"Look what you've done. You're embarrassing me in front of my kid just because you're so selfish. You can't just give me the Lego set for my daughter. You are such a moron. Now give me that set or I'm gonna call security."
After she said this, I looked her square in the eye and I just said, go ahead, call him. The entitled Karen then does just that. She calls the security, but then strides up to me quickly and hits my hand hard with her bag, so I drop the set. She then picks it up and holds it as if it's hers. All the while, her kid is trying to tug at her dress and tell her to please stop. The entitled Karen then turns and yells at this kid, saying that she's doing this for her and screaming for her to go back. At this point, the security had finally shown up and they had just seen the part of the kid running away. This entitled Karen tried to run after her kid, but was stopped by security. They questioned us, but when I tried to speak, she interrupted me and just started yelling.
"What took you so long? Arrest this man. He tried to steal the set I bought for my daughter."
They looked at me weird for a second, but then I spoke up. I asked them if we could just check the cameras, because then they would know the truth. After I said this lady's face was redder than a ripe tomato. She then tried yelling that there were no cameras in here, but I pointed to a camera about 4 meters away from where we were standing. I also added that I'm sure at this distance, it would have recorded all the audio as well. I smirked smugly at this entitled Karen as her face went paler than a marble floor. I wondered if she was a lizard person who could change colors. After we checked the cameras and the audio, they immediately kicked her out of the store and banned her from coming here ever again. When I left the store, much to my terrible disappointment, she was waiting for me by the entrance of the mall. I can't describe how bad I felt for this kid, especially as the entitled Karen screamed and yelled at me, claiming that I was selfish. And at this point, I had just had enough because I yelled back at her saying, "You can keep that trash talk for the police because I'm calling and reporting you for assault and harassment." And then suddenly at this point, she went quiet and tried to apologize, but I was not having it. I ended up calling the cops and she bolted for her car. Thankfully, I took a picture of the car with a number plate as she was leaving and gave it to the police when they arrived. I also showed them the camera evidence of both the things that she said in the store and at the mall entrance. They asked if I wanted to press charges and I gladly replied with a yes. A few days later, I get a call from the cops telling me that she would have to pay $3,400 for the assault and harassment, as well as spend 3 days at the station, plus 700 hours of community service after all of that. They said that she was married to a really wealthy husband who is the owner of a famous local brand, and this specific local brand did have a big share in the mall. But as soon as he heard what happened at the store, he decided to pay absolutely no bail to reduce her sentence. So in the end, I got glorious revenge. But I can't help but feel a little bad since her punishment was pretty brutal. So what do you think? Am I the jerk in this situation? This story and situation is absolutely brilliant because first and foremost, you are not the jerk here. You did everything right. You stood up for yourself, you called the cops on this lady who was harassing you outside the mall, and this lady assaulted you. I'm surprised the people in the mall didn't call the cops sooner. So no, you are not the jerk. If anything, you did everything right and you handled that perfectly. You got a picture when she tried to run off and you had all this evidence to use against her. And in my opinion, the worst part about her sentence is the fact that she has to do 700 hours of community service. That sounds absolutely miserable, but after the way she treated you, I think she got exactly what she deserved. And while it doesn't happen often, sometimes you can get that glorious revenge on an entitled Karen who absolutely deserves it. If you like this story and would like to submit your own, check the link in the description for the Am I the Jerk podcast subreddit. We would love to hear about your experiences. An anger management therapist throws an absolute temper tantrum over just a few dollars at the restaurant I work at, and I could not be more surprised. So I thought this particular couple was going to be my last table. They seemed to be done with their meal, so I wanted to get them paid and off my mind. I had a sudden rush of about 12 to 14 people in my section, and I really just wanted to go home at some point tonight. After they declined dessert, I dropped their check off and resumed setting up my 2 large parties that just came in. As I'm stressfully trying to get things moving with one of the parties, the guy from the couple is waving me over to their table. I'm thinking in my head, oh, please don't order anything, just leave. When I come over to this guy, he looks irritated and starts to argue with me over the price of their drinks. One of them is discounted because it's on the late night happy hour menu, but the other one is not. I try explaining this to him, but he keeps insisting that if I discounted one, that I should discount the other. For the record, I don't discount the drinks myself. The prices are already set in our system on the computer. He's getting more and more annoyed as he's incessantly flipping through our drink menu, intent on finding something to support his argument. He then turns to the page with a list of drinks that have late night discounts, and I immediately point to the page. As I'm trying to explain exactly why these drinks are listed the way they are, he slams the menu closed on my finger and continues on with his angry rant, stating that this should have been explained to him, especially since one of their drinks wasn't going to be discounted. At this point, I had had enough. I had already pulled my finger out of the menu that he slammed closed, and I said, look, I'm gonna go find a manager to explain it to you. Then I turned around and walked towards the kitchen. He then starts shouting, where are you going? Why are you walking away? As if I didn't just explain to him what I'm doing. I was starting to get irritated myself, especially since he was wasting my time when I needed to take care of 2 large parties. I explained to my manager that he was crying about not getting a happy hour discount on a non-happy hour drink. I also told the manager that he just wanted to argue with me and that he slammed my finger in the menu when I was pointing at the happy hour drinks trying to explain this to him. I explained this to my manager and I apologized that she would have to waste her time dealing with this nonsense, so she walked over to just go ahead and deal with him. He told my manager that I lost lost my temper with him, and that his girlfriend went to wait in the car because she was scared of me apparently. He added that he's a therapist, that his office was just up the street, and that she should consider sending me to him for some mandatory counseling. For the record, no, I did not lose my temper, and your date did not leave because she was scared. She left because your little temper tantrum over the price of a drink, maybe $2 to $3 difference, was embarrassing her. After he left, we looked up his business and got a huge laugh out of it. It didn't list his qualifications, and most of his Google and Yelp reviews just completely trashed him. And most of the people that went there were just referred from traffic court. The last time I was sent to traffic court, they provided a list of qualified traffic schools to attend. So somehow this clown got on one of those lists. Reviews included people saying he doesn't know what he's doing, he often tells people that they need to pay cash because the credit card reader is down that day, also known as possible tax fraud, and he makes people write positive reviews about what they've learned and accomplished in exchange for their completed documents. Needless to say, this guy was a complete joke. You know you have issues when you lose your temper over $2 to $3 for a drink. It's as if this guy just didn't want to accept the truth and read that, hey, I was wrong. And the fact that he's an anger management therapist and he acts like this in public is unfortunately a very telling sign that he is not practicing what he is preaching. And what kind of toxic scumbag would make other people give him positive reviews just so they can get their completed records? That has got to be some kind of unethical behavior, especially from a therapist. I mean, come on. But hopefully next time he just doesn't go to that restaurant because clearly he doesn't know how to read and he is just going to get upset over a $2 to $3 discrepancy on the final bill. I snooped through my husband's phone and found a Tinder verification email from 4 years ago, and I don't know what to do. So my husband and I have been together for 5 years, and we've been married for 1. He's not given me any indications of cheating before this incident, so I was feeling very insecure about myself the other day and did something that really made me feel bad. I went on my husband's phone and went to his emails and typed in Tinder to see if he had ever been on this app behind my back. We met on Tinder ourselves, but deleted it together 5 years ago. And wouldn't you know it, after checking through the phone to see if I find anything for Tinder, I find this email asking him to verify his email for Tinder 4 years ago, meaning that 1 year into our relationship, he had re-downloaded Tinder. I never found any other messages or emails on his phone that were suspicious. But now, because of this email, I don't know what to do. On one hand, I know I did something wrong, and I should not have invaded his privacy and gone through his phone. But what if he did something wrong too, and this is the only way I would have found out? The only legitimate reason for it that I can think of is that at one point, he looked through and downloaded all sorts of messaging apps for work because he was designing a fake messaging app for some presentation and was looking for different styles online for some inspiration. I remember him asking me to download some too so he could see how the chat looked with me, and I remember him talking about the way Tinder looked back then as well. The problem with that is that I don't remember if those conversations with him happened 3, 4, or 5 years ago. So at this point, I'm stumped on how to proceed from here. Do I ask him about this and admit that, yeah, I went through your phone and found something sketchy? Or do I keep quiet about this because I was an idiot for going through his phone behind his back in the first place? What should I do? I think realistically, you just need to talk to your husband and ask him what's going on with this. You've been together for several years, and it's not like you don't know this man. So in your heart of hearts, I'm assuming you probably think there's no way he would cheat on you. And to be honest, I think you're right. And I think you've also done a really good job of explaining why he might have downloaded Tinder once again. From the sounds of it, it looks like it was a work-related thing where he was trying to figure out some kind of user interface for a thing that he was doing with work, and that's maybe why he decided to re-download it just to look at their interface to get inspiration or something like that. But as of right now, you legitimately only have an email trying to confirm that he was downloading Tinder. Like, that's it. You don't have anything else. It'd be different if you went through his phone and found like text message conversations or emails or photos or something to indicate that he's cheating. But right now, it's just nothing. If anything, you should just bring it up with him and say, hey, this is what I found on your phone. And in my opinion, going into that conversation, you then need to be ready for the conversation about how you went through his phone without asking. I mean, at the end of the day, that is a breach of trust. And you went through his phone on a whim just because you're feeling paranoid, which in my opinion isn't really a good reason or a good thing to do. Because if anything, it's just a reason to cause friction in the relationship. So hopefully this conversation goes well, and hopefully he just downloaded Tinder for a work-related situation. Otherwise, this situation could get a lot worse. My friend seems to enjoy finding ways to humiliate me, and I'm really not sure what to do. So I've known my best friend Mary for about 7 to 8 years now. Mary is not her real name. I've had her back through tough times, and she's had mine. The rest of this post might make her sound really bad, but honestly, she is not a bad person. She's a kind and caring friend. But there is one thing I've noticed that she does a lot lately that I don't understand fully. She seems to keep finding ways to make me feel humiliated. Recently, I was at her place and she came out of the bathroom. She sighed and said, "This is awkward, but every time you use my toilet paper, you pee on the floor. I'm sorry, I didn't want to say it, but I'm just so tired of cleaning it up." I was genuinely shocked and embarrassed, and I believed her. It's not a problem I've ever had anywhere else, but maybe there was a chance I was just careless, or there's something about her toilet that makes me stand up funny. The next time I used it, I was very careful and made sure I checked the floor after I was done. It was perfectly dry, so I just washed my hands and I left. 10 minutes later, Mary used the bathroom, comes out and says the same thing. You peed on the floor again. But I know for a fact I didn't. I made it a point to check the floor thoroughly before I left that bathroom, and I know for a fact that it was dry. So I told Mary this, and she just shrugged and said, "Okay, if that's what you want to tell yourself." Another example involves when I was trying to learn Spanish. I've been working really hard and doing 3 to 4 hours of my personal study every night, as well as attending private lessons. Every time I mentioned something I learned to Mary, she would correct me, which was really weird because for one, her Spanish is at the same level as mine, and also, I know just enough to be able to tell that she's usually wrong, but I would just let it go, as I figured maybe she was just right in a different Spanish dialect. We went to a Spanish language cafe so I could practice, and I wanted to order some hot chocolate, but I wasn't sure what the word was in Spanish. I was about to get out my phone to check, but Mary said, "It's chocolate gaseosa," and for me that just didn't sound right, but my Spanish is still beginner level, and the waiter was coming along, so I just went with it. The waiter looked really confused, but a little amused at my attempt. We muddled through a conversation where he was able to finally work out what we actually wanted. I looked up what Mary had told me, and the word she told me in Spanish basically meant fizzy chocolate for some reason. There's a bunch of other examples I won't get into, because then this post would be very long. But what I want to ask about is how do I bring this up to her? I don't want to start a fight about it, but the few times I've pointed out that she's not being truthful, or that I don't agree with what she's saying, she's blown me off and been very dismissive. What should I do? I've got to be honest, it really does not seem like this is a good friend. She is treating you very poorly, like she's actively making fun of you and gaslighting you in really weird ways. Like she made you think that you peed on the floor. Like, come on, that's just weird. And she made you purposefully say the wrong word at a Spanish restaurant, all because you're trying to learn Spanish. It's pretty toxic in my opinion. If I was in this person's shoes, I would definitely talk to my friend about this and try and figure out what the problem is. And to the credit of the original poster, that's exactly what they did. The OP goes on to say that they talked to Mary for a few hours, and they gave them some examples that they had come up with, basically explaining that the way she's been acting has made her feel really humiliated, stupid, and small. And at first, apparently Mary was very dismissive of this, and basically said that she was making a big deal out of nothing. But thankfully, the original poster did not drop the subject and pushed further, trying to figure out what the problem was. And apparently, Mary was just trying to test the boundaries of where their friendship really is. And apparently, this has to do with some previous friend that Mary had that made her feel like garbage, and so she's basically made it a habit to do this to other people, which is just crazy to me. Mary then goes on to explain that the original poster is the only person that she's ever run into who doesn't push back against her when she tests the limits of their friendship. This is her way of testing if someone is actually wanting to be in her life unconditionally, which in my opinion is really toxic. To push someone's boundaries just for the sake of it, also you can try and stir the pot and see who they actually are, is a very good reason to drop someone off when it comes to being a friend. And I can see why other people have kicked Mary to the curb when she's treated them like garbage and gaslit them. So in my opinion, even with this update and with Mary explaining herself for the original poster, I would drop this person as a friend. She tried to convince you that you peed on the floor when you know you didn't. And that alone is more than enough for me to say that this is not someone that I want to be friends with. Today, I messed up by accidentally throwing a full glass of wine at a complete stranger who was celebrating her birthday. So a friend and I went to a winery and started with a glass of red wine. I was really doing my best to make a good impression because he's a friend of mine that I met online a few months ago, and we were just meeting in person for the first time. So I was already a bit nervous and anxious about the whole meetup, which is totally normal when you're meeting someone from online. As we were standing at the tasting bar just chatting, a group of women walked in the main door, and one of those women were wearing a birthday sash. Immediately, one of the birthday girl's friends came right up to my friend and I and started chatting. So naturally, we started chatting back. She seems super cool. Then her birthday friend comes up to us and says, "Oh, are we making
friends,"
and quickly puts her hand out to me to introduce herself. I was kind of caught off guard by the quickness of her gesture, which made me a little nervous, so I tried to suppress the nervousness by matching her energy by moving my hand quickly forward to shake her hand. I moved so quickly that I bumped my full glass of wine out of my other hand, basically throwing the glass of wine directly at her, with the glass shattering at her feet. And needless to say, I was mortified. My friend stood there in shock as I apologized a million times to the woman, making sure that they were okay. They were all wearing sandals to make matters worse. What made things slightly better is that the women were so unbelievably cool about it. When they stepped back from the rubble, they all bursted out laughing and told me that was something they would all do and to not worry about it. Someone from the winery came by to help clean up the glass, and the winery was nice enough to give me another glass of wine. Another bystander who witnessed the event brought me a rubber wine glass that are sold in the gift shop and told me that I should give rubber wine glasses a try. I completely recognized the joke and appreciated other people trying to make me feel like it wasn't a big deal. After all that, my friend was cracking up and was totally supportive as well. He said he was very happy to have experienced this event. I told him that this is just what it's like to be around me. I'm weird, socially awkward, and I do and say stupid things. But in all of that, I always promise an entertaining experience. Even though no one got hurt and it wasn't a big deal, that event has replayed in my mind a million times since it happened. Even though I tried to play it off as cool as possible and joke about it, I am still so horribly embarrassed. So I'm hoping that sharing this experience will give my brain a rest from the event and actually be able to laugh at it myself. I think all things considered, this definitely could have been a lot worse. Someone could have gotten hurt, someone could have gotten offended, but luckily it looks like the birthday girl and her friends were there to have a good time. So if anything, you can at least smile about that. An entitled Karen tries to tow my car in front of my own house, claiming that I'm blocking the driveway for the people who actually live there, despite the fact that I've lived there for 30 years. Here's what happened. In my life, I've managed to elude a lot of entitled Karens so far, but today, of all days, one finally got me. At the moment, I am cleaning out my house, and I have a container on my driveway for this purpose. Logically, this means I can't park in my driveway. So, in order to not further limit the already incredibly scarce parking possibilities for my neighbors who don't have a driveway, I park in such a way that my car is in front of my driveway and only takes up a little bit of a parking space. So 3 cars can fit wonderfully in this spot. No big deal, right? But unfortunately, karma had other plans, and instead sent me a middle-aged lady with that typical Karen haircut, hydrogen blonde hair, and draped in a lot of jewelry, as well as wearing clothes typical of this group. I have lived here for over 30 years and know pretty much where everybody lives around me, so I know their addresses as well. In the case of this entitled Karen, I didn't really know her name, so I just got out of my car and was on the pavement when this entitled Karen started shouting at me. She said to me across the way,
"How dare you park like that in that driveway? That is so inconsiderate. I cannot believe you. You better move your car right now, honey, because I'm gonna be calling a tow truck right away. I know the people who live in this house really well, and they will not appreciate this."
And after she said that, I simply could not believe what I was hearing. Here's a fun fact. I live alone in this house, and my parents have passed away, and I've lived in this house for over 30 years. Not only does she not know me, but she most definitely did not know my family. When it comes to me, I'm someone who likes to clear things up straight away. But in this instance, I thought I would play along. So with that in mind, I went ahead and let her call the towing company. The entire time, she was calmly leaning against my car, waiting until she finished her call. When I asked her if she was finished and if I could leave now because I had to go to the toilet very urgently, she just looked at me confused and held her nose to the air. I took her weird head nod as a yes, dug the keys out of my own pocket, and went up to my own house in my driveway that I chose to block. So I waltz up to my front door, unlock it with my keys, go inside gracefully, and slam the door behind me. As I peeked to look at this entitled Karen, the expression on her face was priceless, a real picture for the gods. Instead of waiting for the tow truck to come along and sort this out, she just left. So in her place, I waited for the tow truck company. As soon as they arrived, I explained everything to the guys, and I showed them the necessary identification papers and gave them this entitled Karen's address. She's someone in this area that I know where she lives, but I don't know her name directly. One of the guys said that the lady had to pay for the services of them simply showing up, and from the way he described it, I'm guessing that the bill won't be cheap either. I'm thinking of warning the lady so that the shock about the bill won't be such a big deal for her, but on the other hand, I'm not sure if I should. Either way, sweet justice is coming my way for this entitled Karen Karen who tried to tow my own car in front of my own driveway. How unbelievably entitled and trashy do you have to be to get in someone else's business like that and try and ruin somebody's day? Can you imagine if the OP wasn't home and suddenly they come back and they see that their car is completely gone? Or what if the OP was inside for a second only to then go outside and see their car getting towed? I mean, how weird do you have to be to get up in somebody's business like that and assume you know something that is just blatantly not true? In my opinion, I wouldn't warn that lady about anything. I would keep my mouth shut completely about the invoice that is coming her way. Because you're right, chances are that's going to be an expensive bill. This lady tried to tow your car. So honestly, I think it's time for karma to come her way and teach her a lesson. I've been lying to my parents about my major for 3 years now, even though they're paying for my tuition. And now I don't know what to do. I'm a 21-year-old male, and I have always had a rough relationship with my parents, my dad especially. We are extremely different, and he has always expected things of me I don't want to follow through on. For example, he is a big football fan. When I did not try out for the high school team like he asked me to, he took away my car and we barely spoke for 3 months. Even now, he brings it up frequently and says it disappointed him that I didn't want to share his interest. I did join band in high school, but he did not go to a single concert and would tell me constantly that it was embarrassing for him. He greatly prefers my older brother, who's 27, all because they are so alike. My dad co-owns a business with his brother and has the expectation that my brother and I will take over the business as soon as they retire. My brother studied business in college and our dad paid for it, under the expectation that my brother would work under him after graduating, which he ended up doing. When I went to college, I told my parents I wanted to major in music. My dad said that I could, but that I would be responsible for my tuition and any loans I incur. He said he would only pay if I majored in business. When I tried to see what aid I could receive, they said that because my dad's income was too high, I wouldn't be eligible to receive anything. There was no way I could afford it without their help, unless I used student loans to pay for 100% of my tuition. I did work through high school, but I worked for my dad, who did not pay me an actual check, so I have almost no savings aside from birthday money. I declared my major as business, and my parents agreed to pay. My first semester, I was extremely depressed, and I was not enjoying my classes. I was struggling a lot and thought about dropping out. I told my dad about it over winter break and asked him if he would be okay with me changing my major. He told me that he would prefer to see me working the rest of my life at McDonald's, as well as homeless, before he saw me as a music major. That upset me even more, and when I told my college friends about it, they encouraged me to change my major anyways. They said that if they couldn't accept it, I should probably cut them off anyways, because my dad was so harsh. So I changed my major, but I was too scared to tell my parents. For the past 3 years now, they've had no idea about my major. I've lied to their faces and told them straight up that I'm enjoying my business classes. My dad is proud of me for the first time ever. He keeps talking about how excited he is for me to join the business after I graduate. I feel guilty lying to them, but every time I think of how quick he was to say he'd rather see me on the streets than happy, it just makes me double down even harder. I graduate this year and I can't keep up the lie anymore. It's been weighing on me so heavily, I've started to feel physically sick with anxiety. I'm looking for advice on how to break this to them. I've been so prepared to not have a family anymore. I'm ready to just leave a note and run off. Can I salvage this? Or is the damage already done? What should I do? This story is crazy because there is so much to unpack here. The pressure that your dad is putting on you to run this family business when he retires is really ridiculous. Like, he didn't even think about your feelings on this matter for a second. You are clearly not passionate about business at all, and he does not sound like a nice person. I mean, in high school, he didn't even humor you and show up to any of your concerts. That is so toxic and so incredibly rude for no reason. He could have at least shown up and said, hey, at least I'm here, even if I think it's dumb. Sometimes showing up is literally enough. So I'm so sorry that you've been dealing with this. This sounds terrible. I also can't imagine the stress you've been under for the past 3 years. You're on the verge of graduating from a major that you did not tell them about, and I can't imagine how stressful that is. I think eventually you are going to have some kind of conversation with him and say, hey, I did change my major and here's why. And honestly, from your perspective, I can kind of see where you're coming from. Your dad said that he would rather see you homeless than major in music, as well as working at McDonald's for the rest of your life. Which, by the way, as a side note, in my opinion, there's nothing wrong with working at McDonald's or any fast food restaurant for that matter. If it helps you pay the bills and make ends meet in your life, then go ahead and do it. Who cares? The people who do care and put you down for that kind of employment are just terrible people anyways. And this guy's dad is definitely one of those people. You could go to the financial financial aid office and see what you can do when it comes to payments for your college education. There might be a chance where you could start taking over things from there and maybe get ahead of this before your dad freaks out and does something crazy. I'm sure your college has different stipulations that you can work through, but I think talking to them and saying, hey, here's my situation, what do I do? Or even going to your guidance counselor and saying the same thing. I think that would at least give me a game plan if I was in your shoes of how to even approach this situation. So hopefully that conversation goes well with your dad, because based on what you've described, it does not sound like your dad's a very nice person, and I can honestly predict, as well as you can most likely, that this conversation is probably going to be a rough one. This next one came from the Am I the Jerk podcast subreddit. Check the links in the description if you'd like to submit your own story. Am I the jerk for not attending my biological father's wedding? So my dad is a horrible man. He'd always mention that if anyone came out as gay, he would walk out. And guess what? He did that as soon as my youngest brother came out as bisexual and announced that he had a boyfriend. My dad didn't like that, and he even threw a temper tantrum like a baby when he found out that the boyfriend is black. My dad left the house and never returned until my twins were born. This all happened back in 2017, and since then, all the way up until my youngest pair were born, I had never seen him. My own children had not even met him at this point. Anytime we would even try and offer to come over with our kids to try and pay a visit, he would immediately leave. My parents divorced after my dad left, and I have little to no idea what he was up to. Well, it just came to my attention that he met another girl and has been dating her for a long time. My older brother told me that they've been dating since 2016, which is a shock for all of us because my parents divorced in 2018. My older brother found this out about a week ago. I have met the woman that my dad is marrying, and she's only 24 years old, and that made me sick to my stomach because when I did the math, she was only 18 years old when my dad was getting with her. My dad told me that he's marrying her soon and wants me to be the best man. Now, mind you, my dad never listened to me. He always talked down to me, and he was verbally abusive to my wife just because she isn't a white English woman. He did that all to my brother's wives and my youngest brother's boyfriend as well, all over the exact same reasons. So when my dad asked me this, I looked him straight in the eyes and I said, look, I am not attending your wedding. I am not going to be your best man, and I am not supportive of this relationship. If you want a best man, go to someone else who actually supports your decision. And after I said that, I left and I drove off. My dad's new partner and her family found my number somehow, as well as my social media platforms, and they are all collectively calling me a jerk just because I'm not going to my dad's second wedding. They are trying to guilt trip me into showing up to this wedding, claiming that because he's my dad, I automatically should have to go. They even tried to say that he birthed me, to which I responded, first off, my mom gave birth to me, not my dad. And second, I look at family as people I trust, not those who are related to me. So stop with your crying and leave me alone. I told my coworkers the next day, and they told me that I did the right thing. I was getting praised by them, and I can't be more thankful. But I still get calls and messages from this new extended family in my dad's life, even after blocking them, and all of them are calling me a monster. So what do you think? Am I the jerk? You are not the jerk. You did exactly what I would have done. If I was in your shoes and I had a dad who treated me this poorly and walked out on our family when I was younger, I absolutely would not show up to his second wedding. For some context, the original poster is going to be older than his stepmother, and that is really crazy to me. His dad, for the record, is also in his late 50s. So for a 50-something-year-old man to be dating somebody when they were 18 at the time is just really disturbing. That's predatory behavior in my opinion. And if this lady had any common sense about her, she would turn around and run from this situation. So no, you are not the jerk in this situation. I think any reasonable human being would have cut them off a long time ago. You at least made some kind of effort to try and connect with him. So kudos to you for trying. But at this point, I don't blame you for cutting him off, and I don't blame you for not going to his wedding. I'm worried that my high school bully might try and get me canceled later in life because of my acting career. And honestly, I don't know what to do. To start off, I'm a slightly well-known actor and writer, so I'm using a throwaway account just to keep myself safe. But the title says it all. I'm scared that my bully from high school is going to come back and ruin my life all over again if I become successful. To put it plainly, my bully has something on me that could ruin my career if I get my dream job as an actor and a writer. I'm currently on a good path with jobs that rely heavily on an intact reputation, and that anything controversial could destroy years of work within hours. I didn't do anything wrong, but she could make it look like I did do something wrong. It's stressing me out so much. I'm considering a career change exchange, as she still scares me so much to this day. She traumatized me as a teenager. Rewind to 2012, and I'm 15 to 16 years old. I didn't have many friends in school because I moved countries and I was still a little bit weird. At the time, I suffered greatly with depression and anxiety, but I hid it by acting in such a way that everyone would assume I was either conceited or stuck up. The bullying landscape in 2012 British high schools was rough. The language they used towards me back then was socially accepted by other students, but in today's world, they definitely would be villains. However, back then, everyone worshipped them. They were a gang of popular girls. They were 13 to 14 years old. These teenagers would really pick on me even though I was older than them. So much so that others my own age would find me embarrassing to hang around with because I was being picked on by a younger group of girls. Two of the worst girls would follow me home. I don't know if they went out of their way to bully me on my walk home, but part of my route home was along a relatively isolated road where there would be gaps on the road you could duck in and out of, so that whenever I spun around to confront them, they would duck away and laugh, and then resume following me when I turned around. It was so embarrassing for me at the time to be bullied by younger girls, and they found it even funnier when I would spin around trying to find my perpetrators. These actions happened nearly every day, so I just walked home trying to ignore them, angrily hiding my tears all the way home and trying to walk as confidently as possible. They would throw pebbles at the back of my head the whole way along that road, and they would shout terrible names at me that I don't even want to mention. They're so hurtful. Again, they would probably never get away with this in today's day and age. Anyway, one day I got home in tears and I had had enough. I went on Facebook Messenger and I asked her why she was following me home. She replied it was because she hated me. I then got into a heated messaging exchange, her calling me horrible names, and me saying everything that she's ever said to me on my walk home directed right back at her. Over Messenger, I mirrored everything she'd been yelling at me ever, but in text form, and she texted me similar words back. The two girls continued to follow and throw things at me on the way home, all the way up until I left high school. I never told anyone because I was so embarrassed that they were younger than me. I don't remember what I said over Messenger. I think I just copied what she'd been yelling at me for years, but I deleted each message because my parents sometimes checked my phone and I was scared of getting into trouble, and then realizing I was being bullied again, something my mom would not react kindly to, as she cried all the time when I was bullied in primary school. I never spoke to anyone else that way. I knew name calling was wrong, but I was just desperately trying to show that I wasn't weak and I just wanted them to leave me alone. Here's the problem though. I deleted her worst messages, and I deleted pretty much all of my messages soon after sending them in case my parents saw. This was 10 years ago, before Facebook's delete for everyone feature was even available. If you deleted a message, it would delete it from your side and not theirs. This meant I no longer had the message to click on to do delete for everyone. I don't remember exactly what I said, but from the messages of hers that I have left from the conversation, it was basically a back and forth fight exchange of who could come up with the worst names. She probably still has access to all of it, with my name attached and maybe messages that would give away that it's clearly me. I know we were children at the time, but I truly believe she doesn't have a good bone in her body. She was so cruel to me. She also hasn't amounted to much in her life at all, so I'm 100% sure that if I become successful or even get an okay job, she's gonna hear my name and remember those messages that she screenshot and try and distribute them online. I don't think deleting my account will help, as I could have said something that proves it's me. I don't know if there is any way of me accessing what I said, just so I can at least know, but at the end of this, I have no idea what I said, and it makes me so angry looking back that Facebook would store messages from when I was a child, and because I stupidly deleted them at the time, I can't see that data that both Facebook and the other girls still have. Would they come up if I downloaded the cache somehow? I know I said some bad things because she was the one I was copying off of, but I can't remember what I said. But I know I was trying to show her that I'm just as strong verbally as she is. But back in 2012, some awful words were used as casual insults. If I become more high profile and she posted the screenshots, would it ruin my career? What should I do? I think this is a fair concern that you have about yourself 10 years ago, but I think also in that same vein of thought, this was literally 10 years ago. As you put it, you were a child. You were in high school and you made some mistakes. You went down to her level and you decided to be just as nasty as she was, which looking back is probably not the best idea, but when you're a kid and you're getting bullied every single day and you have people stalking you home, this was probably your only answer to their abuse. And yeah, it wasn't a very very good answer, but you learn from it. I really just don't think you should hold yourself that accountable for being 16 and making a bad mistake. Everybody can look back on their life and find a moment where they're like, man, I wish I had not said that. I know that's true for me at least. And also, you really have to remember that your former bully has no power over you anymore. They are gone. Just look around. They're nowhere to be seen. They cannot hurt you anymore. You are so far past that. And in the end, if we're really counting points, it sounds like you're a lot more successful in life than they will ever be. So why worry what they think? If they were to take this hypothetical route where they expose you with some messages you sent as a teenager, then that just shows how much of a terrible person they are. And then if anything, if you really are at a high profile position, you can then defend yourself and say, this girl harassed me every day of my life in high school and stalked me home, throwing rocks at me and calling me terrible names. And in a moment of weakness, I reciprocated and I regret it. I was a teenager and I've learned and I've moved on. And that's honestly it. Your abuser and your bully has no power over you. And I truly think you should confidently run at your career options. It sounds like you have some really good opportunities in front of you. And I just don't think your fear of this bully who has no hold over your life should stop you from pursuing your dreams and being successful. My father, who hasn't been there for me my entire life, is trying to guilt trip me for making a decision about my name. And now I don't know what to do about it. First, some backstory. My father and mother split up when I was only 1 year old. I moved back to England with my mother and my father stayed in America. Until recently, I didn't know the real reason they divorced, but it was because my father cheated on my mother about 3 months before I was born. So once I found that out last year, I was less inclined to talk to my father, and he is constantly denying that he had any affair. Over the years, my father made no effort to keep in contact with me other than birthdays. And as a child, I didn't really understand communication over email, so I rarely contacted him first. I feel as though I wasn't responsible for building this relationship as I was just a child. Nowadays, whenever I go a month or more without texting, he'll always bring up that I don't care about him and that his new stepkids keep in contact more often than I do. And when he says this, it makes me feel like garbage, especially when I'm being compared to some other family that I'm not a part of. And to top it all off, I know for a fact he's only doing that with malicious intent. I honestly don't care about him because he has never made the effort to show that he cares about me. I always had to spend my time and money visiting him in America when he has a very high-paying job, which makes it so he could easily afford to come visit me at least once every few years when he has the time. Recently, I changed my first name due to being non-binary. I didn't want my birth name, so I changed it. I consulted my mother and my stepfather, as well as my close friends and my therapist at the time about this decision, but I did not contact my father. Now, my dad is getting angry at me over text message for not including him in this decision, even though in reality, he is a complete and total stranger. He threatened to disown me over the decision, stating that this is a costly mistake and that it's costing me over $1 million, implying that I won't be in his will. And that's the worst part about all of this. I don't care about the money. I just wanted a dad. He is being a complete jerk and I don't know how to deal with this. At the end of the day, he's my biological father, but I don't want anything to do with him. What should I do? I mean, you put it best. You honestly don't need to have anything to do with him. And while yes, he is your biological father, his actions prove over and over again that he quite literally does not care about you. This man obviously has the time and the money to be able to visit you, but chooses not to do it and leaves that burden on you. And you have it right. When you're a kid, you have no obligation to try and establish any kind of relationship. That's not your responsibility. If anything, that's the dad's responsibility. He should have stepped up and been more involved in your life. It's not fair for that burden to be placed on you at such a young age, especially considering all the things that your dad did to your family. So overall, I don't blame you for changing your name, and I think it's really wrong and toxic for your dad to be guilt-tripping you, all because of a choice you're making as an adult. You can change your name, you could do whatever you want, but for him to try and hold this imaginary money hostage against you, all because you're changing your name into something that you're more comfortable with, is just another form of manipulation and just one more way for him to try and control you. I mean, let's look at the facts here. He doesn't even make the effort to try and visit you. You have always needed to visit him, despite the fact that he has the money to do whatever he wants. It sounds like he's a millionaire. There's no excuse. So if this man truly is some kind of stranger in your life, then just keep him that way. I wouldn't let some weird threat about keeping you out of his will when he finally passes on prevent you from living your life to the fullest extent in whatever way you choose is best. An entitled Karen harasses a lady with crutches, all because she wants her seat on the train. But karma had other plans as she got exactly what she deserved. Here's what happened. So I've been living in Finland for a while now, and I had really come to think of Karens as being an American phenomenon. They are never something I really thought to see out in the wild in Finland of all places. People from Finland in general tend to keep to themselves and not bother anyone with things like invading their personal space or even having small talk with strangers. Today, much to my dismay, I had my image shattered, and I can now attest to the fact that Karens exist all over the world. One great thing about where I live is that the public transportation system is absolutely brilliant. I can take a train from where I live to most places in the city without any real problems or any long waits. I rarely have to wait more than 10 minutes just to catch a train to get where I need to be. This is especially good since I was recently injured. In short, when I was going down the stairs, my feet forgot how to be feet, and so I took a little bit of a tumble. And to make a long story short, I ended up breaking my ankle, and I'm in crutches until it gets better. Today, I needed to head into the city center. It should have been a very quick and easy trip with minimal walking overall. So relatively, it was going to be a painless experience considering my condition. With my crutches, I hobbled my way across the street and got onto the train. Now, to paint a little picture, the way the trains are set up is like that of most subways. You don't have to go in through the front door, and you can enter the train from one of the set of doors along the sides of it. On the side in front of each of those doors is an open space where the seats fold up to allow room for wheelchairs, walkers, strollers, and anything similar to it. Now, there is a little nook behind the doors I enter through with 2 fold-down seats. I choose to sit there because those are some of the last seats taken on the train, and people with strollers and wheelchairs have to maneuver a little extra to get in there, making them generally less desirable. But they are perfect for someone on crutches, just like me. So I take my seat and I jam out to my music while waiting for my stop. We get about halfway there to my destination when a woman with a gigantic stroller gets on the train. Now, as I said, the entire area was completely devoid of people. She had her choice of any of the spots in that space to park her behemoth stroller wherever she wants. However, none of those places were good enough for her because immediately her eyes fell on me. She actually fit her stroller into one of the vacant spaces, walked over to me, and actually asked me to move so she could sit there. I just stared at her and blinked. I was completely surprised. First of all, I was surprised that a woman from Finland was actually speaking to me on the train. In my entire time living here, it has honestly never happened before. I've had tourists ask me for directions, but outside of drunk people, I've never had anybody from Finland engage me in small talk. I pulled out an earbud and asked her to repeat herself. She gave me an annoyed huff while also assuming that my accent must mean that I don't understand her language. She rolled her eyes and switched to English. She said to me, "You need to move so I can sit down." I blinked again and looked around her at the 4 empty seats across from me, all sitting beside her carriage. I said to her, "There are empty seats right over there." But she responded back saying, "I want to sit there." Now, I did my time in customer service, and I no longer have the patience that I once had. After she made her demands known, I took a second to myself, took a deep breath, and finally responded to her. I said, "It's good to want things in life, isn't it?" I was not having any of her nonsense. I put my earbuds back in and I turned to look out the window. Then she tapped me on the shoulder and I looked back at her again in shock that a person from Finland was willing to put their hands on another person, all while being completely sober. She then said to me, "You don't understand. Do you not speak English?" Mind you, she literally just heard me respond to her in English. It's my first language after all. I responded by saying, "I understand that there are a bunch of empty seats right there and you're bothering me for mine."
You have to move. These seats are for mothers and their babies. I am a mother.
I responded calmly by saying, "Congratulations, but your procreation choices have absolutely no bearing on me or my life." The funniest part about this exchange is that literally right by my head was a sign that had a little image of an old person with a cane, as well as a person with a wheelchair, a pregnant woman, and I bet you guess what the other picture was, a person with a cast on their foot with a crutch. I was actually on the sign, a person with a cast and a crutch. It seemed at this point that she was just incredibly annoyed because she started to raise her voice as she demanded that I move. She kindly informed me that I could just sit anywhere else. She was now loud enough that a few of the other passengers had taken interest and were watching her. Rather deliberately, I picked up one of my crutches and tapped the handle against the sign right beside my face. I said, "This spot is also intended for injured people. As you can see, I'm injured. There are empty seats right next to you. I suggest you take one if you want to sit down, because I am not moving. This lady then starts screaming and saying,
"But I want to sit there. You have to move for me because I'm a mother."
At this point, she just kept saying that over and over and over again, perhaps thinking that the 11th time saying it would somehow be more compelling than the 6th time. I decided to leave her to it and went back to looking out the window, hoping she'd get tired of talking to a brick wall. She did, but rather than take one of the empty seats, she marched up to the driver at the front. Now, I can't even imagine what it is that she said to this driver, but at the next stop, the driver walked back to the back where I was, and it was obvious she was planning on telling me I had to move, but as I came into view, she just looked surprised, then confused, and then incredibly annoyed at this entitled Karen. She walked back up and spoke to the mother. Again, I couldn't hear what they were saying, as they were too far away from me. Whatever she said did not please this entitled Karen, as she came back to her stuff and practically threw herself into the fold-down seat. However, in a beautiful display of karma, the seat did not like the force at which she threw herself into it, because there was a loud snap of plastic cracking as this lady jumped to her feet in alarm. Just at that moment, the train lurched forward and she was thrown unceremoniously on her motherly backside. And at that point, I couldn't help it. I busted up laughing. I'm not sure if the next stop was actually her stop or she couldn't take me laughing at her, but she grabbed her Giga stroller and literally stomped off the train. Sometimes karma really does have your back. This is awesome, and this original poster is literally my hero. They stood up for themselves and said, "No, I'm not taking this for a second." They quite literally belong in that seat. The sign says so. I mean, this original poster was cold as ice, and I'm such a big fan. I love to see stories like this where karma comes through right when it counts. So good for this original poster for standing up for themselves, because the way they were being treated was absolutely unacceptable. I'm convinced that my perfect relationship was built off of lies, and now I don't know what to do. So I'm a 19-year-old female, and I thought I had the perfect relationship up until now. He's everything I want in a man. He's older than me, super successful, good looking, he's big and strong, and really affectionate. The only real flaws I can think of are that he has a bit of a temper, and sometimes he can be a bit smothering with the amount of affection and attention he wants. But these are very minor things. He never keeps anything for me. I have the passwords to all of his devices, but I am never the type to look through his stuff because I don't really care. But I know that if I did, he wouldn't have a problem with it. He has this one friend that he's really close with. They're almost like brothers and went through really tough times together. Since they're so close, I kind of wanted to see if he said anything about me to him during the beginning of our relationship. I know it's really wrong of me and an invasion of his privacy, but I know my boyfriend wouldn't get mad at me for that, and I just thought it would be fun. I swear I didn't mean any harm from this. I found out a lot. In some of their conversations via text messaging, he would tell his friend about how much he loves me and how he loves me so much, which is what I kind of expected. But when I scrolled up to the very beginning of our relationship, that is when I started to see things that I really did not expect. He was saying stuff like, "I need her," which really just kind of seemed harmless, to be honest. Then came the stuff that made me question everything. He would consistently want to know my location, and his friends would help him find me a lot. And a lot of those times, he supposedly would randomly bump into me, and all of these interactions were completely planned out. There was so much more that I don't feel like getting into, and while I still do love him, and this doesn't really change how I feel about him, overall though, I'm kind of scared. I don't know what to do. My parents, my friends, everyone loves him, and they'll be so upset if I leave him, especially my dad, since my dad and him are almost like business partners. What should I do in this situation? The first thing you need to remember is that this is your relationship, not your family, not your friends. This is your relationship. They are not in the one-on-one with this guy. So if for whatever reason you feel like this is a bad sign and you don't feel like you're safe, then you definitely need to reevaluate your relationship with your boyfriend. There's nothing wrong with that. But it is a little scary to me that he, as well as his friends, would basically stalk you just so they could get these interactions going, just so you two could fall in love and be together. That is a little creepy if you ask me. The original poster goes on to say that he's 11 years older than her and that they've been dating officially for 4 months, but all of these random encounters happened about 3 months prior to them officially dating. The original poster also goes on to say how they feel so violated and that it just doesn't feel real that he could actually do something like that. She says that she literally could not imagine that the person that she was dating, who she thought was so perfect, perfect, would follow her around just to try and catch her for himself. And honestly, if someone did that to me, I would be freaked out as well. So your feelings are completely valid. If you honestly feel freaked out and you feel like this is too much, or if your safety might be compromised in any kind of way, then it's time to take a serious, hard look at this relationship. Because if it's not healthy and you're not safe, then in my opinion, it's time to move on, no matter how perfect things might seem. This next one came from the Am I the Jerk podcast subreddit. Check the links in the description if you'd like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for humiliating my ex-girlfriend in front of her entire family after I discovered that she cheated on me? First, a little bit of context. I am a 27-year-old male and my ex is now 25. This story happened approximately 3 years ago. We have been longtime friends since the equivalent of high school in my country, and when we both graduated, we didn't lose contact. We ended up dating for a year or so before she moved into my apartment, since I lived closer to her university. She was still studying when I started my first job as a web developer. I worked mostly from home while she was off at school. Since I was the only one working, I provided for about 80% of the things at home back then. Everything went great for the first 6 to 7 months until I started feeling that something was off, or I'd say she felt off. We would spend less time together. We didn't share as much affection as before, and she would look more and more irritated. I didn't jump into conclusions at first because she was also preparing exams at that time, and I thought her recent behavior was due to a lot of stress building up. She would always leave home and come back at her usual hours, so I did not notice anything. But I started to realize that she was more and more on her phone, barely spending time with me except for dinner. That is, when she was not preparing food just for herself. I reached a point where I was really questioning our relationship, so I decided to investigate. I feel bad for snooping into someone else's privacy, but today, I don't know where I would be if I didn't breach into her DMs while she was showering just to take a look. And what I saw absolutely destroyed me. She was texting with another guy, and the content left me livid. There were scandalous pictures of the both of them, if you know what I mean. There were sweet messages and arrangements to see each other when she was supposed to be studying. I even saw messages of her berating me and calling me terrible names, basically implying that I'm too stupid to ever know that anything's going on. Well, this idiot stayed stunned for a few seconds. I told her in my most normal voice that I was going to go grab something to eat while she was in the bathroom. When I was outside, I called my parents and told them everything. My mom literally cried, and my dad asked if I wanted to spend a day with him and my brother. I took a day off and I went there. I cried for a bit and I saw red, which leads right up to my revenge on my ex. My ex's parents absolutely loved me. Her dad and her got abandoned by her mom when she was younger. He got married with another woman, but still despises everything related to cheating. They sometimes invite us for dinner, and all I had to do was wait for their invitation. In the meantime, I started investigating. I learned more about the guy she was seeing, and he was also in a relationship with another woman. While she was showering, I took screenshots of my ex's DMs and sent them to me, deleting the originals from her phone. I called my dad while she was out and asked him if he could help me with her stuff. There wasn't much to move anyway since the place was mine to begin with. I left him my keys as well as my ex's parents' home address a few days before the invitation. In fact, speaking of the devil, the invitation came in. Everything goes well. I've texted my dad and he packed everything related to my ex. Her clothes, her books, everything. And he put it in his truck. I was waiting for him to text me when he was out in front of their house. When the moment came, I let it all out. I will always remember what I said because I honestly have nightmares over it. I said the following: "I'd like to thank you for letting me be a part of your life. You mean a lot to me." And at this point, their faces are bright and they are smiling. I go on to say, "I'm sorry to say that this is the last time you'll ever see me here." And at this point, they all look confused. But I say, "Oh, but don't worry. My soon-to-be ex-girlfriend over here will introduce you to the new man she's been seeing behind my back." And that's when I dropped this guy's name. When my ex heard his name, she turned white, almost transparent. Her parents took a few seconds to realize where I was going, and her dad looked absolutely stunned. My ex tried to speak, but she was tearing up. She tried to start saying, "Let me explain," but I shut her up with the same calming voice I had, and I said, No need. I sent most of the evidence I had to her dad. The messages and the condescending comments about me. Her dad teared up as I looked at my ex and said, "My apartment keys." At first, she refused, but her dad humbled her with a calm, crying, but menacing voice, demanding that she give me back my keys. She protested again about her stuff, which was supposedly still at my place, but I shut her up again, saying that they were outside waiting for her, and that I'm so sorry for being the idiot she described in those text messages, because I didn't have anything to pack it up correctly. Her dad had heard enough and asked me to come outside with him. Not gonna lie, I thought he was gonna beat me up, but once we got outside, he cried and hugged me, saying that he was so sorry and that he regrets that I wasn't the one he hoped for his daughter. I told him that he was an amazing person, that if he had any issues, I'd always be around for him, and even to this day, I'm still on good terms with him. I left, and when I joined my dad, I heard some screaming in the house. I heard them yelling, stating that she had a week to find a solution to her problems because she's getting kicked out. A day later, and I had more than 40 missed calls from my ex-girlfriend. I completely ghosted her and blocked her from everywhere. I heard from her dad that she attended therapy and went to live with her best friend, who apparently blasted me on social media for being a piece of garbage, to which I replied with a screenshot from my ex calling me an idiot. Oh, and remember about the other guy and the fact that he was in a relationship? Yeah, I kinda sent everything to his girlfriend at the time. Not only did she leave him the same day I left my ex, but I've offered her to come over, and we ended up spending some time together, and nowadays we are on good terms. She is still a good friend of mine, and she found a better guy for herself. A few years later, I left my job for a better paying one, and I'm willing to start my own company. I didn't find anyone yet, but I'm focused on my career, so I don't really care. I honestly wanted to let the internet know about my story, since I kinda laugh about it now, but I do still feel a bit guilty for snooping and plotting like I did. I sometimes wish I went through direct confrontation now that my social skills improve gradually, but I need your opinion. Am I the jerk for exposing my ex-girlfriend the way that I did? I think what you did is absolutely brilliant. I can confidently say that the OP is the last person I want to double cross in any way, shape, or form. They're gonna plot against me harder than Light Yagami from freaking Death Note. I mean, the amount of thought and detail and planning that went into this is absolutely incredible. And sure, you could have gone the confrontation route, but the impact this makes on this person's life, even after she cheated on you so flagrantly and under the assumption that you would never figure it out, in my opinion, is so worth it. She was so terrible to you. She was using you for money as well as your home, and she did not care about you. So I don't think there's any problem with exposing her secrets to the entire family. Karma 100% had it coming for her, and in my opinion, she totally deserved this. So no, I don't think you're the jerk, but I do think you might be some kind of supervillain of some kind. But what do you think? Leave a comment down below. Would you ever think of going into this much detail to try and get back at your ex-girlfriend? Let us know down below. My boyfriend wants to keep a spreadsheet of how much I owe him in money, and I honestly don't know how to feel about this. So my boyfriend and I have been together for almost a year, and 2 months ago he moved to the other side of the country. We both graduated college last year, and he got a job right out of college, making $200,000 a year. Neither of us have any debt, and he is extremely frugal with how he spends his money. I am currently unemployed, but actively interviewing. Both my grandparents have passed away within the year, and to put it simply, I haven't been okay since. I am not financially well off, and I dislike my situation living at home. My boyfriend is aware of all of this, and is offering to break his current lease to find a place for us to live together. However, he says it's unreasonable to fully support 2 people at the same time, and that he is happy to split costs evenly and keep a tab on the amount that I would owe, and I can repay it back over time once I get a job. I honestly don't know how to feel about this though. I'm scared that once I do get a job, I won't make nearly as much, and that it'll end up taking me years just to pay him back. I don't know how to feel about this proposition in general, but I really don't want to continue with my current living situation. I truly do not want to sound entitled here, but this offer kind of scares me. I know the reasonable option is for me to decline and to keep living at home, but I don't know. Maybe this is a good offer and I just don't realize it. What should I do? This would be a simple option if I were in your shoes, because it sounds like your boyfriend is very detail-oriented, which is nice. It's good to have someone in your life who's like that, because you can know for a fact that you can rely on them to get stuff done. In that same vein of thought, it honestly feels like you're setting yourself up to go into debt to this guy. You have only known him for a year, and the option of moving in also comes with this weird expectation that he's gonna lord over over you with how much money you owe him. And sure, if you borrow money from somebody, you absolutely should pay it back. But it seems like from my perspective, moving in with him right now will only mean, hey, you're gonna owe him money. And I think you have it right. I don't think you're gonna land a similar job where you're making $200,000 a year and you can pay him back super easily. If anything, in my honest opinion, this kind of sounds like a disaster waiting to happen. I personally, if I was in your shoes, would not move in with him. Not until I have a job and I can pay my fair share. But I think you can go about this in a way where it's not combative and it's non-confrontational. But I think going into this without any kind of job to have as a backing, if you do end up having some kind of debt with your boyfriend, would be really, really smart in the long run. That way you can pay for yourself and pay for the bills that are allocated to you. If anything, work together with your boyfriend and figure out a good system. Because I would hate to see you spend money that you don't have and for there to be some kind of spreadsheet looming over you from your boyfriend that says, hey, you owe me this much money. I just don't think that's a good idea, and I think it's too soon to move in at this point. So wait, get a job, and have something under your belt that you can have with you when you do decide to move in. That way you can provide for yourself and have some kind of backing financially. An entitled Karen refuses to accept the fact that I'm blind, despite the fact that I have a service dog. Things got so bad that security had to separate this entitled Karen from me because she would not leave me alone. Here's what happened. So because my parents are more at risk from COVID, I've been going shopping alone more often during the pandemic. Yesterday was one of these cases. Grocery shopping is a more involved process for a blind person. I have to ask staff members to assist me. I also have my guide dog by the name of Gumbo inside the store with me. The dog in itself increases the instances of bad experiences overall. Now, during my shopping, I always get a wide array of reactions to my dog, but one in particular occurred towards the end of my shopping. I heard loud footsteps, followed by a loud screech saying,
"That dog is so cute, can I pet him?"
It was obviously a small child by the voice, so I prepared myself before responding that no, my dog cannot be touched, due to him being my guide dog. Surprisingly, the child didn't act entitled, but seemed surprised and excited about a dog having a job. She asked me a few questions and then left. I honestly thought nothing of it and continued with my shopping. After I finished, I decided to stop by the food court on the way out for some lunch, so I went and made my way across a supermarket. I ordered my food, sat down, and waited. But by some cosmic gracing of bad luck, that is the exact moment that this child and their entitled parent decided to walk close by. I heard the child tell the mother about what I told her, about how my dog is working as a guide dog, that I'm blind and use him to get around. The mother isn't really saying anything, but I can sort of tell by her tone and the few words she does say that she is seeing some issue with what her daughter was told. I decided to listen in, and after the daughter finished her babbling, the mother came up to me. Now, people coming up to me is super common. I thought nothing much of it. However, the first words out of her mouth were her saying the following:
"Why did you tell my daughter that you're blind?"
Her tone was very harsh, very accusatory. I immediately knew what was coming, but as usual, I just put on a smile. I responded by saying, "Well, that's because I am blind. Your daughter asked me about my dog, so I explained what guide dogs are and why I use them." This entitled Karen then doubled down by saying,
"You're not blind."
I couldn't believe what she was saying, so I just said, "Excuse me?" The way she said it completely caught me off guard.
"You're not blind. My cousin is blind, so I know what a blind person is like. You shouldn't lie about that. I think you should let my daughter pet your dog. She likes dogs."
I responded by saying, "Well, ma'am, not all blind people are the same. Just because you know a single blind person doesn't mean you know how all blind people are. And as I already explained, your daughter can't pet my dog due to him being a seeing eye dog." This entitled Karen then started to go off on me, saying that I'm lying, claiming that there was nothing wrong with my eyes and that I was using a phone. She then said,
"Don't you dare say you're blind to me if you're gonna show me that you're not at the same time. Why would you lie about that?"
I told her that I'm not lying. I said, "My eyes looking fine have nothing to do with anything. Not every blind person's eyes look the same. Look, you're stressing me out, and I'd rather if you just left me alone." After I said that, I was hoping that things would calm down and she would just leave. But things only escalated from there.
"My daughter wants to pet your dog. She's been well behaved all through today, and it's more than reasonable to let her play with your dog."
I told her no once again, and I asked her why she wouldn't accept my answer. She responded by saying,
"You said no using that BS excuse. You're honestly starting to really upset me. I don't know who you think you are, but I happen to work for someone at this place. And if you don't stop it, I'll get security to to throw you and your fake guide dog out of here.
Now, I'm sure at this point you get the picture. This went on for a good 5 minutes of her progressively getting more and more angry at the fact that I wouldn't let her daughter touch my guide dog. The daughter was actually silent through the entire thing. I don't even think she really cared that much. But this entitled Karen, however, was another story altogether. Eventually, with the argument going nowhere, she just screamed out,
"That is it. I'm going to get security right now. If you're smart, you'll be gone by the time I get back, or you'll regret it."
I snorted at her small fit and heard her huff and storm off. By that time, my food had arrived, so I just started eating. I didn't really believe she would go get security, but with entitled Karens like this, you simply cannot be sure what they will or won't do. About 5 minutes or so later, she returned. I heard her stomping forward in my direction from about 15 feet away, and she was raging on to a security guard.
"Look, that's her. You see? She's sitting there with a dog. She says it's a guide dog, but she's not blind. You have to kick her out. Dogs aren't allowed in here."
I sighed and removed my earbud to prepare for the incoming ordeal. A deep male voice sounded from a few feet away in front of me, and he sounded like he had just about had enough. The security guard said, "Miss, is this your service dog?" I said, "Yes, it is. He is a seeing eye dog. I'm allowed to take him in here. I have a copy of the appropriate law if you really need it." The security guard said, "No, that's fine. This woman is saying you aren't disabled though, is that true?" I responded by saying no. She's just angry that I didn't let her daughter touch my service dog. I honestly don't know why she cares so much. The entitled Karen jumped in at that moment and called me a liar. She said,
"I told you, I have a blind cousin. Don't try to tell me I don't understand blind people, because I do."
I directed my attention to the security guard and I said, "Look, I've tried to explain to her that one blind person doesn't represent all blind people, but she doesn't seem to get it. Could you please ask her to leave me alone? I just want to eat in peace." The security guard then asked me, "So you are blind?" And I said, "Yes, I am." He then says something that absolutely blew my mind. He asked me if I could prove that I'm blind in any kind of way. I asked him how on earth I could possibly do that, and why should I? The security guard then says, "Well, it's just that she is saying one thing and you're saying another thing. I don't exactly know who to believe. But yeah, I see how proving you're blind doesn't really work." He then looked at this entitled Karen and said, "Why is it exactly that you think she is lying?" The entitled Karen then says,
"Are you serious right now? Are you thick in the head? Look at her eyes. They're not white or cloudy like blind people's are. She is literally looking at her phone."
The security guard then looked at me, asking for my response to this accusation. I told him that maybe her cousin has those eye symptoms, but not every blind person does. Those symptoms are caused by diseases like cataracts, which I don't have. As for the phone, devices have been accessible to blind people for years. I find it surprising that she has a cousin who is blind and doesn't know that. And after the entitled Karen did not take that as a good answer, I further explained that I have a basic light perception. I can detect light and I can direct my eyes to it out of habit because that's where my hands are occupied. I then said, "Look, it's not my job to educate you on what you don't know. Sir, please, just ask her to leave me alone. I don't care if she doesn't believe me. You don't need to stand here and mediate a back and forth as if we're going to agree somehow. I'd just like her to stop talking to me and leave me in peace. I'm feeling extremely harassed." I was hoping this would be the end of it. I genuinely did. But this security guard still said that he can't know for sure if I'm blind. And at this point, I was completely dumbfounded. He was using the fact that this entitled Karen had a cousin who was blind as some kind of evidence against me actually being blind. I then told the security guard that if you're not going to get this lady away from me, then I guess I'm just gonna have to leave. Thanks for failing to protect a disabled patron. I stood up to leave, with my guide dog getting up to guide me. I took a few steps and suddenly felt someone grab hold of my harness tightly and pulled me to a stop. This entitled Karen had actually grabbed my harness and said,
"Wait right there. I said I wanted you to let my daughter pet the dog. Then you can leave."
At this point, I was manic. I screamed, "No, get off my harness right now." Now, understand, grabbing my harness is akin to someone taking away your eyes. This entitled Karen was taking away my ability to navigate, so I panicked. This has only happened to me once before, and I panicked then too. I attempted to pull my harness handle back, all the while she was also screaming in my ear. But I wasn't listening. I was too panicked to listen to what was probably about her stupid daughter. The security guard was fumbling around fairly uselessly emergency, as you could expect. Thankfully, a second security guard came up and said, "What is going on?" I then screamed at the top of my lungs, "She's taking my guide dog. Help me. She won't let go." But this entitled Karen denied it all. She said,
"No, she's supposed to let my daughter pet her dog. This guy said so."
At this point, I assumed she was talking to the first security guard. And as you could have guessed it, the guard didn't respond. But the way the conversation went, it seemed like he non-verbally indicated that he hadn't said that. The second security guard said, "Miss, let go of that lady's dog right now or I'll escort you out." The entitled Karen then jumped into the same act as before.
"No, she is not blind. This dog isn't a real service dog. Don't just jump in and assume you know what's going on."
At this point, I had calmed down slightly so I could speak in a more coherent manner. "Please, just get off of me. I want to leave. I don't feel safe. Leave me alone." Thankfully, the second security guard then finally caught on, and that's when I felt the woman's hand being forcefully removed from the harness handle. As soon as I was free, I immediately commanded Gumbo to lead me to the exit. We walked quickly away as I heard this entitled Karen screaming loudly behind me. I was still somewhat panicked, but I was able to calm myself down as I hurried towards the exit. It was so chaotic that I very nearly forgot my shopping where I left it, at customer services. I left, I called a taxi, and I came home. It has really stuck with me for the last couple of days. But the worst part is that these types of interactions are an almost daily occurrence. Blind people are the targets of constant harassment in public, and this woman just went farther than she should have by physically assaulting me and harassing me. I know I could have gotten her arrested, but honestly, I was just so panicked, I wanted to get out of that situation as soon as possible. So why am I telling this story? In short, I wanted to spread awareness. It's important for people to know more about the blind experience and what blind people have to deal with. It's also super important to say, if you're ever a witness to a situation like I just described, intervene. Had the second guard not stepped in and intervened, the situation would have been a lot worse. This story's crazy to me. I honestly can't believe that this person had to deal with that. The fact that someone would actually act like this towards a blind person, as if they already don't have a big disadvantage in life, is just disgusting. And I am utterly shocked that this original poster didn't have this lady arrested. If I were them, I would call mall security and try and get that first security guard fired. They tried to force this blind person to prove that they were blind. How disgusting and toxic is that? Hopefully this original poster never has to deal with anything like this again, because this type of treatment, all because you're blind, is absolutely unacceptable. My boyfriend is actively gaslighting me, and honestly, I'm getting sick of it and I don't know what to do. So I'm a 24-year-old female and my boyfriend is 25. We have been together for 2 years and everything is really good between us. I never see anything that's really wrong in our relationship until I dig into it and really start to think about things. For me, I am an overthinker. My last relationship did not end well, and even though my boyfriend and I have been together for 2 years, I still have some minor trust issues. So months ago, when we first started dating, my boyfriend was holding his phone, and I glanced over and I saw that he had a text message from one of his ex-girlfriends. And after seeing this, it put me in a very bad mood, pretty much for the rest of the night. Eventually, he noticed and asked what was wrong, and after some time, I told him what I saw. We talked it out, I started crying, and he reassured me and calmly talked about it. And he said that they are just on friendly terms. No big deal. I told him just to tell me about it, that I promise I will be more upset if he didn't tell me and I suspected something than for him to just straight up tell me. He then said that he shouldn't have to report to me about everyone he talks to. I agreed and told him that's not what I meant, but to just be open about this situation. So months go by and everything is okay again. But then a couple of months ago, almost the same thing happened, and we were out drinking with friends and someone calls him and it's like 11 o'clock at night. He says it's just a spam phone call. Well, after we woke up the next morning, he tells me his other ex texted him and wanted me and him to go out the night before and go drinking with her friends. But he didn't respond until that day. I had no bad reaction to him telling me this, but a couple of days later, I put 2 and 2 together and realized it was her who called him at 11 o'clock. So weeks go by and we started drinking, and I bravely just jokingly brought this up. And I said, I know you didn't want to tell me because it would have ruined my night, but why couldn't you just tell me that it was her instead of lying to me? Or say it's no one instead of just saying that it's spam? After that, we got into a fight, which involved both of us yelling and me crying once again. He tells me I'm gaslighting him, and that since I had a bad reaction before, he isn't going to tell me these things. I told him I will never bring it up again. I keep telling this man that it will bother me more when he doesn't tell me things. So here we are today, and nothing is wrong. But yesterday he said the same thing randomly. I can't even remember what we were talking about. Neither of us were upset, and it was something random that we said as we were walking around the house. He said that he won't tell me something if he thinks I'll have a bad reaction to it. My problem is, I feel like we are partners. We talk about being together for a long time, including starting a family and living our own life together. This has now led me to the idea, as well as the question of what else is he hiding from me? Can he be talking to random girls or even girls that he knows and he won't even tell me? When is enough enough? How do I tell him again and again that I need him to talk to me and that I won't get upset? I know that I won't get upset because he is being honest and coming to me and talking to me about it. It is all so confusing and I'm just not sure what to do. It seems like the OP is trying to manifest that their boyfriend is cheating on them when I don't think there's any evidence to really suggest that. It seems like you're trying to control things to an extent that you have zero control over. And from the sounds of it, it doesn't really sound like he's gaslighting you, to be honest. I feel like you're kind of overreacting just a little bit in my opinion. I can understand that there's some kind of insecurity between you and your boyfriend, and obviously you don't want him to leave you, but it seems like you're starting to toe the line between being actually worried about something that's actually going wrong as opposed to just being suspicious of something going wrong. I think if anything, maybe read the messages themselves, or at least request to see what he's texting about to at least absolve some of the anxiety you have towards the situation. I mean, honestly, just because he's texting his ex does not mean he's going to try and get with them. So unless there's any kind of signs that he might be going behind your back or doing things that are nefarious, I just don't think it would be healthy to try and jump on this train of, oh no, he's definitely cheating on me, because that's not healthy and that's not going to help anybody. My neighbor rings my doorbell at least twice a day, and it's starting to drive me nuts. I'm at my wit's end and I simply don't know what to do. So just a little bit of context, it's just me and my girlfriend living in this house that we bought about 4 months ago. We have a neighbor who's very friendly and came to introduce himself and his wife. And at the time, I thought nothing of it. I honestly thought it was just a friendly gesture, but pretty soon he started coming over every single day. Then eventually he came by twice a day. Then he started to ring my doorbell a total of 4 times a day. At this point, it has now been like this for months, where he frantically rings my doorbell about 4 to 5 times in a row. And he does this about 2 to 3 times a day. I will even catch him sometimes peeking in my window to see if I'm in the living room. Sometimes he'll also sit on my porch and just talk about nonsense that doesn't need to be discussed. I don't even respond to half of the things that he says sometimes, and I just give him a casual, lazy response of saying, I don't want to be bothered by this garbage. Something subtle enough that anyone with a clear mind would be able to pick up on. But this guy just doesn't seem to get it. I don't even answer the door sometimes, and I try to make up excuses, explaining to him whether in the moment or later that maybe I was cleaning or something like that. But he literally doesn't get the clue that I'm busy or I want to be left alone. I should also note that he suffered a terrible car accident that ruined some of his mental abilities to some degree, as he repeats himself a lot in a conversation. And I wonder sometimes if it affects his short-term memory and he forgets he even came over to visit me. But his wife lets him do this without any issue and doesn't even say anything to him. Like, do you not realize how invasive this behavior is? But to his credit, he has been very kind in some ways, like bringing over some fresh fruits and some vegetables from his garden. He has also referred me to an excellent local doctor and hooked me up with a landscaper to help me take care of my garden. But it seems to me that he only does this as some premise for his own personal entertainment. And at this point, I simply can't take it anymore. I just want my privacy back. I'm at the point where I'm actually fantasizing about how I want to absolutely explode my built-up frustration on this guy the next time he comes to my house to disturb me. But I also don't want to make an enemy of someone who's across the street and clearly mentally unstable. And at this point, I'm unsure exactly of what to say because he just seems so unaware of anything even surrounding him. Please, how can I go about addressing this? What should I do? Having a bad neighbor is literally a nightmare, so I empathize with this person completely. And worst of all, they're invading your privacy and looking through your windows. I think I would lose my mind if someone was doing that to me. It sounds like this guy just simply doesn't get it, but maybe his wife will. If I were in your shoes, I would go talk to the wife. I would say, hey, I appreciate you coming by, but you're starting to cause problems in my life. This might be a good way for her to step in and say, okay, we need to leave them alone because this behavior is not appropriate. It's not okay for someone to come up to your house and ring your doorbell multiple times throughout the day just to get your attention. It's really disturbing, and honestly, it's a little bit creepy. Another idea that I had is possibly building a fence or some kind of barrier between you and your neighbor. You can make it very clear in a passive-aggressive way that no, I don't want visitors, and no, I don't want you at my house. I think ultimately, though, you do need to have this conversation with them. You need to make it very clear that, hey, this isn't appropriate and I don't like this. Maybe you're right. Maybe this guy just isn't completely there, or worst of all, he might not care altogether, which is not fair for you. Regardless, you need to put your foot down and say no more. Please get off of my property and stop coming over every single day. You have tried to be subtle, you've tried to be nice, but now it's time to be mean, because this is your privacy we're talking about, and these neighbors are clearly violating that, and in my opinion, you should not have to deal with that. But what do you think? Leave a comment down below. Have you ever had a neighbor like this that was so obnoxious that you just didn't know what to do? Let us know down below. My girlfriend gives me the silent treatment after a fight, and then yells at me if I try to break that silence, and now I honestly don't know what to do. My girlfriend used to do this quite a bit. In fact, every time we fought, and eventually I asked her to stop because that stonewalling behavior gave me anxiety and made me question my self-worth. She stopped, and for a few months we would solve problems in a different way. We would do things together and not against each other. She usually needs some time to cool down after an argument, but now she's back to doing what she used to do before. We fought last night about something stupid, and the entire day she's been ignoring me and avoiding me ever since this morning, and it is now 8:00 p.m. For example, if I go to one room, she moves to the other, and this just continues to repeat over and over again. And the few times that I've tried talking to her and asking her to talk to me and stop because she was getting back to that behavior that made me anxious and really hurt my feelings, she would end up yelling at me to leave her alone, telling me that she doesn't care if this is harmful for the relationship. She also said she's leaving today because she doesn't want to be here and doesn't want to see me. As a side note, she doesn't technically live with me, but was spending time with me until Wednesday at my house. The way she spoke to me felt completely humiliating and demeaning. I honestly thought we left this in the past and that we moved on from this type of behavior, but now she has me questioning everything. We even agreed months ago that if she was upset about something, she would approach me about the subject in a calm manner and we would discuss it. I just don't understand why she's drastically come back to doing this really rude and painful behavior. This is all so confusing and I honestly don't know what to do. This is really toxic behavior. If my significant other treated me like that, especially after explaining to her in detail why this behavior hurts my feelings so much, it makes you feel anxious, it questions your self-worth as a human being, it does not feel good. But in this instance, it's really important to note that she's choosing to do it anyways. Your significant other is doing the one thing that she knows will hurt you the most, and she's doing it repeatedly. Like she even said she doesn't care if this damages the relationship. That is super toxic and very immature. If that happened to me, that would make me question if she even cared about me. I can understand if this is someone's like automatic response when it comes to dealing with confrontation or anything along those lines, but to obviously and very clearly choose to do it still, even after your partner said, hey, this really hurts my feelings, is unbelievably toxic and is not something that's going to lead to a healthy relationship. It is incredibly immature and she's just trying to hurt you, which is really not fair for you. I think the one benefit here is that she doesn't live with you, because otherwise this would be every waking moment. It's bad enough that it seems like she holds grudges over the dumbest things, and any kind of argument leads to her stonewalling you out of her life. But maybe with her leaving Wednesday, this can give you some time to reflect on what happened and try and make amends and make up to her in some way. I think regardless of what you do, a conversation needs to be had about this. You need to re-explain to her that this is really hurtful behavior and it is not cohesive to a healthy relationship, because otherwise this is just going to repeat in the future and you're just going to feel like garbage all over again, and you definitely do not deserve that. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist at the top of the description. And if you want some chill music to put on in the background, check out easymode.com. If you like Am I the Jerk, subscribe to Am I the Genius. Everything will be linked down below in the description.